right, this is the Alamance County Board of Elections, November 8th, 2022 meeting. We are coming out of recess and beginning the meeting again for the evening. We will continue to take care of business here.
Just waiting on precincts.
We will soon have the one stop and the mail-in absentees that we've already pre-processed uploaded to the State Board of Elections website, so that will be available sometime soon. And as the precincts report in, we will add those election day totals to our early voting totals. Let's see what we set this thing on.
What is that? CBS?
That one about adjustments. He's got more important business than making sure we've got the internet on our TV. Camera's on the back.
The Treaty of Paris ends this week. Matt, what's the American Revolution? And you got Paris 2000. The answer there? Here in second place, Matt, what are you telling? I will wait to 2600. Here is your clue in the Treaty of Paris. 1856, the Treaty of Paris ends this week. What's Crimea? That's correct. You have $5,200. Middlemarch 2000. The name of this character writing about world myth has become synonymous with dry, out-of-touch scholarship. See, this is why it's called Hope You Read Middlemarch. Matt, what's Dorothy? No. Amy or Matea? Edward Westhoffen. Matt, select again. Middlemarch 16. Yeah, why not? This author wrote a dedication to my dear husband. Well, they never actually read as the husband was pretty out. Matt, what's Elliot? Frank Georgillian. Well, Matt, select 2000. I'm thinking Linnaeus said the script, but someone wrote this other L scientist who thought acquired traits can be inherited. Amy was Lamarck. Very good. Wrong, but excellent 16. We were wondering for Hippocrates, and a contestant came up with this 5-letter ancient who greatly influenced medieval medicine. Matt, let's get to it. Yes. Over 2000. Seen here is this famous madam, an official mistress of Louis XV and a patron of the arts. Matea, is Madame de Pompadour? Right. Over 16. The name of this London airport goes back to Anglo-Saxon words meaning goat farm. Matea, let's Gatwick. Yes. Over 12.
She's 112.
Pinky, Blinky, Pinky, and Clyde are the ghosts in this classic video game. Matea,
What's Pac-Man?
right again.
Over 8.
Don't get mad and blow this part of many machines. A flat ring used to tightly seal a joint. Matea,
What's Gasket?
yes.
Over 4.
Because its hundreds of seeds are on the outside, this berry isn't considered a true berry. Matea,
What's a strawberry?
that's correct. You have found your category. Potpourri.
Middlemarch 12.
With new ideas about ventilation, diet, and fever, Lydgate is an idealistic young one of these. Matea,
What's a doctor?
got it.
Middlemarch 8.
Our heroine, Dorothea, finds herself weeping in Rome on a very unromantic wedding journey. What we would call this?
Matt.
It's honeymoon. Good. Wrong, but excellent. Well, we've never had this kid rapper of day and night name as a response before, but did hear his name on a tune called Uncle Cracker. Matea,
Who's Kid Cudi?
got it.
Not that excellent 8.
We were surprised to get Pierre Leclerc as a response instead of this French explorer with a big U.S. lake name for him. Matea,
Who's Lachine?
no. Matt with Champlain, that's the wrong.
Yeah.
Dwarf 2000. Make it this adjective. It also means attractively and fashionably dressed. Matt, what's Tony? Maybe a snappy. Yeah, I'm happy. Smell like 416. Inclined to be tearful or a sentimental fool. Matt, what's savvy? No. Matea, what's weeping? Yes, righteously.
Going the wrong way.
Dwarf for 12.
And Uzo-Aztecan speaking people of northeastern Arizona. Matea,
What's Hopi?
Hopi, yes.
Dwarf 8.
A passel of puffins or pigeons? Matt.
What's copy?
No. 80. What's a flock? Like Doc with less than a minute to go.
What's 12?
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist, says Verbal Kings in this film.
80. What's the usual suspect?
Right?
What's 8?
Off-scene in writing on fact and fiction, the Microsoft Liberty Balance includes when the legend becomes fact, do this. Matt.
What's tell the truth?
80.
What is Tell the Legend?
No. Closer. Pretend not a Western fan. Print the legend. Print the legend is the book. 80.
Paris 8.
1763, the Treaty of Paris ended this country's claims to most of North America east of the Mississippi. Matt.
What's France?
Yes.
Middlemarch.
Of a swamp, a cathedral, or a town, it's what Middlemarch is. Amy.
What is a tap?
It is. Yes, right there. Paris. Oh, sorry. We were just having a little too much fun. We won't get to the last 4 clues. As we head into Final Jeopardy, but she's got a big lead. Nice buzzer time, which you get. Mateo, let's see what your category will be. Chemical element names. Back with the clue in just a moment.
Hey, Dad, the most out. Any questions, Chris?
Oh, good. Thanks, Mom.
How can we spend you on your family's prescriptions in one?
I'm always up for what's next. Even with higher stroke risk due to AFib not caused by a heart valve problem. So if there's a better treatment than warfarin, I'll go after that. Eliquis. Eliquis reduces stroke risk better than warfarin and has less ventral bleeding than warfarin. Eliquis has both. Don't stop taking Eliquis without talking to your doctor, as this may increase your risk of stroke. Eliquis can cause serious and, in rare cases, fatal bleeding. Don't take Eliquis if you have an artificial heart valve or abnormal bleeding. While taking, you may bruise more easily or take longer for bleeding to stop. Get help right away for unexpected bleeding or unusual bruising. It may increase your bleeding risk if you take certain medicines. Tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures. The #1 cardiologist prescribed blood thinner. Ask your doctor about Eliquis. We'll be back with Final Jeopardy right after this.
The holidays are fast approaching. If you're like a lot of homeowners, you're starting to clean some common areas around your house. Prepare for family and friends. Today, joined by PJ.
Get your stick ready, Justin. Put another one. You gotta do first. Is that all of them? Come here. Yeah.
Those are ones standards you can get in machines.
Oh,
The ones run on 11
You have to run them again.
I saw that prompt come up on that screen. Invalid.
So here's the original.
Okay.
You would do anything else? All right, for now?
Yes, I just saw.
We need to release what we have.
I would release what we had, yes. I mean,
I
I think.
agree.
Yes.
Want to make any kind of statement to let the public know you got any additional activities?
Okay, and the result, I mean, who do I?
Quick question was, as St. Patrick will then say, we aren't able to report them all because of bad stuff.
Right.
Should we send a press release out to say, we even have to rerun
The
first group of ballots? Because the technical one, because the media error.
media era, okay. With everything else, I think not.
Was there a bad stick from last week? So we're gonna have to figure out what that is.
But the good thing is they've already been duplicated. They should snap through pretty quickly.
We're gonna do that tonight.
And what I'm gonna let y'all do that, what I'll do is take in the precinct. We're gonna keep them in order, get the sticks ready for him, so that when he gets that run, we can automatically move into the.
Because we don't do the precinct reports until after the absentees. I know
I mean, that's my opinion, because you would want to go into one of those two things and get him
yes, I agree.
potentially.
So who's gonna run the ballots?
Justin.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm gonna get the sticks ready for him.
I got you. Okay.
If I had been here last time to remember how to, I mean, I haven't seen it since, so I don't,
Just to let the public know, we are the USB drive, our media from the absentees that we ran a week ago are having difficulty. And so we are going to be running those absentee ballots, mail-in absentee ballots again. And it should go rather quickly because everything's already been, we've already run them before, so that we've fixed any possible problems with the ballots as they are. So they should go through the tabulator pretty quickly, and then we'll report those, and then we will as the information comes from the precincts, we will be adding those in. So we will be releasing some information from the second round of mail-in absentees that we completed this evening. So there will be some returns coming in sooner, but then we will be adding those from the earlier absentee meeting as we wrap up rerunning them through the tabulator.
Bring the money.
I was at my polling place today. Listen, I've been voting since I was 18.
This sort of station is back there.
Somebody said, yeah, we used to vote for the best candidate. Now I vote for who's not the worst candidate. Not exactly ideal. You wouldn't say who was voting for, but there's a little bit of that as well.
We'll get more from the exit poll analysis too about what drove people to the polls, and let's get straight to the results now. In key states, CBS News declares Ron DeSantis, he's the projected winner, I should say, as governor of Florida. Also in the Senate race there, CBS News projects that Senator Marco Rubio is the winner in that Florida Senate race.
Yeah, it's not the table or anything like that. So
In Pennsylvania, this is the most expensive Senate race in the country. It is a toss-up at this hour, as you can see the votes are trickling in slowly tonight. In Georgia, our current rating is a toss-up in this contest. Again, these are very early numbers. We must caution at this hour. This is going to change a lot throughout the night, but we're going to let you know as the vote is counted in the governor's race. You can see CBS News is rating this leading Republican. The numbers may not show that yet again because just 32% of the vote is coming in at this hour. And in Ohio, this is key. CBS News rates this as lean Republican for J.D. Vance. Just 20% of the vote in there, but we'll have more on that Senate race coming up. And in North Carolina, CBS News rates the North Carolina Senate race as leading Republican for Congressman Ted Ted Budd. Now let's turn to control of Congress. We're joined by Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett and our Elections and Surveys Director, Anthony Salvanto. Let's break down what we're just learning about this and why we're saying that the House leans Republican.
Good evening, Nora. Great to be with you. We're at the data desk all night. What is data? It's really your voices. How votes come in that you cast throughout the process in our midterm election. As that data comes in, we're going to project races. And right now, Anthony, we can project a trend line in the United States House of Representatives.
Here's the score. Right now, 181 seats to 158 seats in favor of the Republicans. The reason we know this is the data we've seen so far from exit polls and the reports that have come in from the East Coast is there's an average shift of 3 points per district on the average towards the Republicans. That gives them the early edge.
And that is not exactly obviously going to be the final number, but that indicates a possibly favorable night for Republicans. And Anthony, if I'm not mistaken, this is consistent with what we saw in all of our battleground surveys leading up to election night.
It is indeed pre-election polls bearing out as we see early reports tonight.
Yes, going back to the House.
Well, on that note, the House there, I mean, this would be sort of a watershed moment. We already heard just at the top of the hour of Robert Costa speaking to the man who's expected to be voted in as the next Speaker of the House. That will change a lot in Washington.
Oh, absolutely. And now the question is how much it changes in Washington depends on who controls the Senate. And also, as Rob mentioned, how big McCarthy's majority is. The more he has, the more he can do, the less grief he'll get from his restive caucus. We'll talk later about that as it becomes more clear that he might be in school.
The other big news, of course, that we just got the calls that Anthony Salvanto is making is in those 2 Senate races. Let's start with North Carolina.
So, Anthony, let's talk about North Carolina and help our viewers through the process because they're
Hold
looking
the whole
at
brain just right there.
Look at these numbers. Why are we at this moment giving this a lean Republican projection?
And the answer is the difference between the early vote, which tends to favor the Democrats, and the election day vote, which tends to favor the Republicans. They are counting the early vote first. That has shown easing out to a countability. However, we've had exit poll interviewers all over North Carolina today. We've had precinct reporters, and in those reports, it favors the Republican 10. But not a surprise, Republicans turn out in force on election day. So we can rate this lean Republican based on all of that data and bring it to you with a lean red.
And is that a similar story that we're seeing also in Ohio? Because again, I'm thinking about our viewers at home. They were looking at it, we showed the map, and they said, well, wait a minute, Tim Wright, that's blue. J.D. Vance, that's red. Again, lean Republican, well, that's the same story.
Well, that's the same story, and that is going to be instructive all night long. It's what type of vote is in the count. It's early that favors the Democrats.
And what we're going to do with the data.
That's incredibly helpful. Now let's come back to our table here and talk about the party that controls the presidency usually loses House and Senate seats. We should set that up. That is traditionally true. That is historically true. The average is 28 House seats and 4 Senate seats. But tonight, will Democrats hold on, or will it be a red ripple or a tsunami? That's the question really tonight. I think the data is just too soon to tell, right?
It would be too soon, but certainly things are trending in their direction. And this is something the White House is anticipating. I've been hitting and snapping up over the summer in anticipation of the Republicans taking control of the House, hiring new batch of lawyers and communicators to get ready to counter the offensive that's coming from the GOP. The White House and the President the last few days signaling they understand it perhaps it's too difficult to hold the House, which is why they're so eager and keeping an eye tonight on those Senate contests across the country.
I have a feeling before this night is over, Nora, we're all going to feel like kids again that we're on a seesaw. It's going back and forth as the night goes, as the vote comes in, but the numbers will keep changing.
Yeah, as they
Fascinating to watch it.
As they count the vote, yeah, that's why we have to pay close attention, because you're right, it's because the mail-in vote gets counted different than people who have been voting in person. We should say we're also getting new information right now on what drove voters to the polls and why. Vladimir UTA has our latest CBS News national exit polls. Hi there, Vlad.
Hi, Nora, good to see you. So what we're doing is we're interviewing people who voted before Election Day, as well as those who voted on Election Day, and that will give us a comprehensive look at this year's electorate, who voters are choosing and why they are choosing it. So let's take a look at the mood of the country right now and how voters are feeling. As you might imagine, most are at least dissatisfied. But what was the top issue? Well, if you're voting for a Republican candidate, it is inflation. That is top of mind. On the other hand, on the other side of the aisle, if you're voting for a Democratic candidate, abortion is top of mind for you. But that is not the only thing that voters are concerned about. Nor they tell us, most Americans say 69% of Americans that we voted, the electorate that we polled, say that our very democracy itself is under threat. So when you take this in totality, You crunch all the numbers and the data, what does it tell us? Anxious times, Nora, anxious voters.
I heard you today, thank you. I want to bring in our moderator of Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan. We predicted some of this, but it's interesting to see why people have gone to the polls, as Gail mentioned, frustrated and striving a vote.
It is. It's the economy. It's the economy. It's the economy. And at this point in the night, what we're seeing so far is the majority of voters have trended to be older. They've trended to be Republican, and are driven by these concerns of inflation. That may not be that surprising, frankly, if you think about that demographic in particular. If you're on a fixed income, you feel the bite of inflation a bit more. You've seen your assets that you own in your retirement accounts shrink back. You have more anxiety around that, and you feel the gas and the food inflation that much more. You feel it in a really visceral way. So at this point in the night, not terribly surprising to see that trend. I spoke to an economist at Bank of America today who pointed out that consumer sentiment right now is in the worst place it has been since the Great Recession, since the financial crisis. And this is even when we've gotten back all the jobs lost in the pandemic. To what Gail was talking about, people are exhausted, they're frustrated, and even though the foundations of the economy may be back, they are not feeling like that. In the South and the West, we've seen an economic recovery pretty quickly since the pandemic, not the case in the Midwest and the Northeast.
And you know what, I think, Margaret, when you're anxious and you're frustrated and you're just mad, you tend to blame whoever's in power at the time, thinking, we need to make a change because what you're doing isn't working.
You try to get control.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we'll have more on the demographic shift in Florida and what drove CBS News to project two big Republican wins. This is CBS News, America Decides. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. We designed smarter ways to detect motion for fast emergency response. We create HD cameras so you can see what's happening in your home from anywhere. All powered by Fast Protect technology, exclusively from SimpliSafe for faster police response. Because in here, your safety is the only thing that matters. Enhanced home security, 24/7 professional monitoring. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
If you have type 2 diabetes or high blood pressure, you're a target for chronic kidney disease. They're the top 2 causes of CKD. CKD usually starts with no symptoms, so you can eat them and not know it. To find out, check your kidney numbers for lab tests. If you have chronic kidney disease, Farxiga can help slow its progression.
Farxiga can cause serious side effects, including dehydration, urinary tract or genital yeast infections in women and men, and low blood sugar. Ketoacidosis is a serious side effect that can lead to death. A rare, life-threatening bacterial infection in the skin of the parent can occur. Stop taking Farxiga and call your doctor right away if you have symptoms of this bacterial infection and allergic reaction or ketoacidosis. And don't take it if you are on dialysis.
Take me and CKD by asking your doctor for your kidney numbers and how Farxiga can help. If you can't afford your medication, ask Farxiga may be able to help.
When your V-neck looks more like a U-neck, that's when you know it's half washed. Downy has 7 benefits that condition and smooth fibers, so clothes look newer, longer. Feel the difference with Downy.
Because the only thing driving should be your style. Pop, pop, fizz, fizz. Alka-Seltzer Plus, cold and flu. Also try her Fizz Fast Cough Relief.
Welcome back. Election night is just getting underway and polls are closed for more than 70 million Americans, and we are getting important clues about who could take control of Congress. Right now, CBS News rates the House as leaning Republican. And here are the newest race results. CBS News can project that when all the votes are counted, Tim Scott will. The New Hampshire Senate race is a toss-up at this hour. More on that in just a minute, but let's dig in now to 2 big races in Florida. CBS News is projecting that Republican Senator Marco Rubio will win re-election, and we're projecting that Republican Governor Ron DeSantis will win re-election as governor of the Sunshine State. Many had predicted that Governor DeSantis would confidently win re-election, but we are watching margins in parts of this state to see what it means for a DeSantis future. John Dickerson.
Remember the squeaker that DeSantis won last time?
Yeah.
He trounced possibly. He's going to do much better than the squeaker he won by last time. And the same is true with Marco Rubio. Both did much better in Florida. And their neighbor might remind them that it's his change in the Republican Party that helped them, that neighbor being Donald Trump.
There you go. Well, look, the mayor here in Minneapolis has some really interesting information on what's going on in Florida.
First of all, Nora, it's breaking news and we're calling Florida this early in the evening. Come on. Americans of a certain age, and believe me, I am one of them, knows that Florida takes a lot. Historically, but not tonight. Florida's cold projected to both the Senate and the governor's race. That by itself is unusual. And sometimes you see big breakout moments that are reflective of a long simmering trend. And we're going to show you that right now in Miami-Dade County, Anthony, with Latino vote.
This is news. In projecting this race, one of the things we looked at is Miami-Dade. Okay? This is red right now, meaning Ron DeSantis is leading in Miami-Dade. That is something we have not seen. In fact, if I light up the history here, John mentioned the 2018 Senate, okay? It went Democratic in the 2018 governor's race, Democratic in the 2018 or the 2020 presidential race, Democratic, okay? Even as Donald Trump won the state. So for a Republican to be winning Miami-Dade right now, that is news. I mean, that is at 74% in, and that's a pretty sus score.
Look, Nora, part of the story in Miami-Dade is this shift. Donald Trump grew his vote in that county by almost 200,000 votes from 2016 to 2020. That's the trend I was referring to just a moment ago. And now it looks like Governor DeSantis, who may or may not be a challenger to former President Trump, is winning that county, may claim that county, which would suggest this is now a breakout moment possibly for Republicans in Florida. And think about that area. Florida is now somewhat comfortably regarded as a Republican state. That's 30 electoral votes in the 2024. That dramatically changes any national political figure's attitude about how do you get to 22-7.
And it's the Latino vote in Miami-Dade. That's so important. It's part of the
And that's a trend line we may see evidence itself in other districts across the country, both House and Senate races.
Yeah, that's such an important point. I think that's something we're going to be talking about in states like Texas and other. Robert Costa, what do you make of that information, seeing what's happening in Florida and how it affects future presidential politics?
I just got off the phone with the House Majority Whip, Jim Clyburn, and he says if Republicans keep making gains across the map tonight in places like Texas, he says, quote, the Democrats need a real good assessment of their message, of their leadership, of why they're falling flat in some of these places around the country.
There's a lot of concern among Democrats tonight, even though some of the vote is still coming in. It's something that we'll watch really closely about why they didn't turn out their key constituencies and what it means for the future of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, like what Major said, people of a certain age, that would be me too. I'm part of that very elite club, Major, because, you know, Florida was always considered a swing state. We can take the word swing out of that now. I talked to the local anchor there, Jim McGee, that said, watch Miami-Dade very closely. If it goes red, forget it. Yeah, it is. You can take it out of the swing state column.
Let's check in with CBS Morning's co-host Tony DeCoppel because he is in Miami for us tonight. Anything on
Florida? He's from Florida.
Question. That is good news out of Miami-Dade County, my home county. It's a big change. And welcome to a Marco Rubio election night party that just got a whole lot louder with these calls, both for the senator and for Governor Ron DeSantis. We heard a moment ago, actually, from someone inside the Rubio camp. They're, of course, elated, and the senator is hoping that this is the beginning of a red wave that will mark a new era, as he put it, in Republican government. Let's talk about Ron DeSantis as well. Very big night for him. He made gains, according to CBS News, exit polling with groups that he lost and lost big back in 2018. He won Latino voters this time by 10. He won women narrowly, but again, he lost in 2018. Those are big changes, and we would be remiss if we didn't also mention the breaking news we've all been pondering as we came on the air tonight, and that is the rivalry between DeSantis and former President Donald Trump. Just a few hours ago, the former president issuing his first clear warning to the rising Republican star here, Ron DeSantis in Florida, saying to him about 2024, do not run. Thinks it would be a, quote, mistake. Said it could hurt DeSantis, quote, badly, and other warnings as well. Said the base would not like it, but I gotta say, folks, I've been talking to Republican voters at DeSantis rallies and at Trump rallies here over the last few days. The base is undecided on this one. It's gonna get very interesting as we look ahead. But how about we look at 2022, since that's where we are right now, and I'll send it back to you to keep thinking through things tonight.
I don't know, Tony, I was getting kind of interested in the battle of the heavyweights there. It's getting quite spicy between the two of them.
Yes, okay. We're not gonna have to run those ballots. Frank at Greenwood told him what to do. Evidently, he put the second today's stick in first, and then put the first stick in, and because the time order or something to do with the time, Frank at Greenwood was the only one that knew how to fix it. So you're not going to have to run the ballots.
Good.
We're gonna have more on all of this debate here. I think we'll be hearing from Don in the south of the night.
We could do that.
Next we'll check in with some of our reporters on the ground.
I keep them, but thank you.
Pennsylvania, those key Senate races also.
We're not gonna
Back in
We
the
got
morning,
to
huh?
Frank at Greenwood knew the, way to fix it.
In a recent clinical study, patients using Salonpas patch reported reductions in pain severity, using less or a lot less oral pain medicines, and improved quality of life. That's why we recommend Salonpas. It's good medicine.
It makes the community more than just a place. It's the people who show up when it matters. To support great dreams. And the care of the local field care.
No time? No time. Time's away between sticks, Robert.
JC tried game plays for the first time the other day. Not where she was. You can always spot a first timer with game plays for dogs and twisted for freeze.
Welcome back to our CBS News Election Night headquarters. We want to get to our CBS News correspondents
Yes,
out in the
yes.
states covering the races that could determine control of Congress. Let's first go to Nicole Killian in Atlanta. Good evening, Nicole.
Hey, good evening to you, Nora, and we are here at Herschel Walker's headquarters here outside of Atlanta. Of course, Herschel Walker looking to unseat Democratic incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock tonight. Both candidates are really hoping that this race doesn't go to a runoff, but the reality is that they have been polling neck and have been in a virtual tie for weeks now. That being said, Warnock continues to make the argument that Walker is not fit to serve. Walker, for his part, has been trying to tie Warnock to President Biden, so it's really just a matter of which argument is going to win out tonight.
Nicole Killian, I know we're checking back in with you. Let's go to that tight Senate race in Pennsylvania. Jerika Duncan is there. Jerika, what are you hearing about turnout there?
Well, of course, the supporters believe that the turnout was high enough for their candidate to win, but that has yet to be seen here as the results are just starting to come in. But something that is getting a lot of buzz here in this area is the fact that Fetterman, along with other Democrats, filed a lawsuit challenging possible votes that may not get counted. Why is that? Because over 1 million mail-in ballots came in, and now we're hearing that some of those ballots were not signed properly, and if they're not signed properly, then they may not be counted, and that is a concern for the Fetterman campaign. Nora?
Jerika Duncan, thank you. Coming up, polls close in one more state. We'll have an update coming up.
A big night in politics, and the polls are now closed. Good evening, I'm Chad Silver.
And I'm Julie Bond. From what we've seen, the ads, and we've heard the candidates' promises, now it all comes down to tonight.
All right, let's get right to the numbers. First up today, the battle for U.S. Senate. This is Richard Byrd's seat. He is not running for re-election. The top two candidates, Republican Ted Budd and Democrat Sherry Beasley. Right now, the results are showing that Ted Budd has a 60% lead over Sherry Beasley, who has 38% of the vote. It is still very low count when it comes to the ballot, so we will continue to watch this race.
Now to a race in the Piedmont Triad. In the Guilford County Sheriff's race, Ken Lipton.
Yeah, I think
He is going up against
already a couple 100,000 votes.
Jeff Rogers has the vote. We've got live team coverage of the race for the U.S. Senate seat right now of the night here in North Carolina. WFMY News 2's Grace Holland is live now in Winston-Salem and Tampa to launch party.
Congressman said that it is hoping to keep this seat still in Republican control. As you said, this is the seat formerly held by Republican. And as you can see, supporters have started to file in. Every minute, it seems like more and more people are starting to crowd in here. More people are very excited. They're waiting patiently for these results to come in. And they are, of course, hoping that will keep that behind the podium here later tonight. Accepted speech where we will have to see. Of course, this has been a very contentious race between him and Democrat Sherry Beasley. He was campaigning around the trial today, stopping at his polling location in Knoxville, also going over to Northville, Lexington, and Winston-Salem. We'll have to see how it all ends out.
Grace, thank you. Let's head to Raleigh now, where Kevin Kennedy is live at Sherry Beasley's headquarters. A potentially big night for her, Kevin.
Could be a big night. There's a nervous energy in the room in here in downtown Raleigh. We're seeing a number of people have started to gather inside one of the main ballrooms here at the Sheraton Hotel in hopes that this kind of pre-party turns into a major celebration later on this evening. April 2021, 19 months ago, that's when Sherry Beasley announced that she would seek election for the U.S. Senate here in North Carolina. She hopes that tonight is kind of a culmination of what has been a very long and a grueling campaign over the past year and a half. She hopes that it ends with a victory tonight. She has crisscrossed this state over the past 19 months, going to all 100 counties, talking to a number of voters and potential voters in hopes that she actually can kind of make history here this evening. If she does, she will become just the black woman elected to the U.S. Senate. She will be the 12th African-American elected to the Senate. Certainly it will be the first time there are ever elected a black female senator. Sherry Beasley expected to be on hand at some point tonight. The results will kind of have a lot to do with that, but we do expect her to show up. We do expect her to address the crowd. She hopes when she gets to the stage, it will be as the next U.S. Senator here in North Carolina. For now that we're live in Raleigh, I'm Kevin Kennedy. WFMY News 2.
Kevin, thank you. Let's check in now with our Ben Briscoe for even more election results.
Okay, so far we've looked at the Senate side of this. I want to take you over to the House for a second. District 6 covers most of the triad, most of the people that live here. We can tell that right now, Kathy Manning, the incumbent, the Democrat, has a sizable lead, 57.4% against 41.8%. There have been a lot of talk going into this about how she would do in these two new counties in the district, more rural areas. We've got Rockingham and Caswell County. I want to show you, even in those counties, she's still taking a sizable chunk of the votes from those rural areas. Now, when we go over to the Senate race, this is really interesting to me. Our new feature on this map can show you how bright the colors are and how strongly the county is going one way or the other. We knew going into tonight that early voting would show Sherry Beasley in the lead originally because more Democrats vote early than Republican. But look at Mecklenburg County. It is not the bright blue.
Ben, thank you so much. We've got live continuing coverage throughout the evening. We're streaming our digital election show right now on WFMYNews2.com, also on YouTube and on WFMY Plus. You can find that on Roku or on Fire TV.
For the rest of the night, this is the team to keep you in the know. We'll have another live update in about 30 minutes right here on WFMY.
Welcome back to our CS News Election Night headquarters with our powerhouse political team. It is 8:30 in the East, and tonight America decides. We are breaking down the biggest races in politics and bringing you the very latest results. Polls have now closed in 26 states, and we are tracking those key races. In the Georgia Senate race, the CBS News race rating is a toss-up. We'll take a look at those numbers. And in the Ohio Senate race, with 29% of the vote in the race leans Republican. Let's check on another key race, Pennsylvania. The CBS News race rating is a toss-up. just 8% in. You can see this is gonna change a lot. This is that seesaw Gail was talking about. And in the Keystone State governor's race, there is lean Democrat. Let's now take a look at the battle for control of Congress. CBS News rates the House as leaning Republican. And CBS, that's actually the Pennsylvania governor's race, but we can tell you can see that there, that's the governor's mansion. But CBS News is saying that there you go, balance of power leans Republican. It is still early in the night, but we're looking at some exit poll data. We're looking at some of the trend lines, and that's why CBS is making that analysis. Here's the Senate for you, which is still a toss-up at this hour. Just a short time ago, I spoke on the phone with Senator Rick Scott. He is the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. He told me that he predicts that Republicans will take the majority in the Senate, that at a minimum, they will have 52 seats. In his words, he says they view that there has been weak Democratic turnout across the country. We will have to wait and see. Let's go now to Scott McFarland, who covers Congress for us, but also has the board to break it all down. How could the Republicans take back the majority?
In all, the bottom line here, Republicans need 51 Senate seats to get the majority. They need 6 of these 10 battleground states. You've already projected Florida, so they've got 1. If they hold these 4 states they have as of tonight, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, they're getting close. They'll have to take one of the seats held currently by Democrats from Nevada through New Hampshire. That's why there's been such a focus on Georgia, and that's why there's been such a focus on Pennsylvania. Democrats want to flip that to blue to preserve the 50 and keep control. That's why there's been so much money spent. $250,000 in Georgia, $300 million plus in Pennsylvania. That is more than the combined police budgets each year for Pittsburgh, Scranton, Erie, and Harrisburg. Nora, that is double the payroll of the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles.
I love it when you do the math like that, Scott. Without a calculator. Keep going on the Senate races and how much money has been spent there, Scott McFarland. Thank you. It is 8:30 now in the East, and polls just closed in the state of Arkansas, and that is where former White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders has been running for governor and is expected to win in that state. Nancy Cordes has been watching all the big governor's races for us, and Nancy, not only Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but there's a record number of women running for governor this year. There are 25 women running for governor this year. That smashes the previous record of 16 women. So we are expecting to see women make some gains tonight. More on that in a moment. But let's take a step back and look at how we enter this night. Of the 50 states, 28 are currently run by Republican governors, 22 by Democrats. Republicans have had an edge there for about the last 12 years. Watch and see whether they can expand it tonight. But there are 9 races in 9 states, battleground states, that we're going to be watching most closely tonight when it comes to governor's races. 7 of those seats currently held by Democrats, 2 held by Republicans. And so Democrats are defending a lot of territory tonight. Now, as you mentioned, Nora, we're watching to see whether the women make historic gains tonight. Currently, there are 9 Republican and Democratic women running states across the country. We expect those numbers to grow, in part because there are.
If y'all want to, I'll get you a ruler and,
There are 3 women running for governor. So we do
basically, one of y'all, if y'all don't mind, calling, right? These are the absentee numbers.
Yep.
So, like, just write the numbers for each candidate.
Okay, so the top number.
This, like for Matthew, it would be 169. No, total vote, that's 169, one socks, but excuse me, right here, 188. These numbers right
Total
here.
votes.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes, because it'd be all absentees.
Oh.
All right, let me get you a ruler so you can.
You want somebody over there to write it, so that way they can look over and we can look over at the same time.
Sounds good. You want to slide down one more? Or does that put you in the, halfway there?
He's gonna call them out.
So this is,
think that's just not a primary.
Yeah. Thanks.
We'll call him.
Go ahead.
Okay.
We are filling out the paperwork for the one-stop totals.
So one-stop totals for U.S. Senate, Matthew Ho, 188. Sherry Beasley, 16,899. Shannon Bray, 357. Ted Budd, 17,569. There were 12 write-ins. U.S. House District 4, Valerie Fouché, 16,648. Courtney Gilles, 18,331. Supreme Court Associate Justice Seat 3, Richard Diaz, 18,108. Lucy Inman, 16,848. Associate Justice Seat 5, Samuel Irving, 16,856. Trey Allen, 18,134. Seat 8, Julie Tate Flood, 18,075. Caroline Jennings Thompson, 16,800. Seat 9, Brad Salmon, 16,369. Donna Stroud, 18,488. Seat 10, John Tyson, 18,125. Gail Murray Adams, 16,725.
725?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Seat 11, Darren Jackson, 16,703. Michael J. Staden, 18,124. NC District 25 State Senate.
Oh, we've got that, okay. I thought I'd lost the page.
All right.
Sean Ewing, 16,486. Amy Scott Gailey, 18,466. NC House District 63, Ricky Hurtado, 8,931. Stephen Ross, 7,994.
7,994.
Yes. House District 64, Ron Osborne, 7,704. Dennis Rydell, 10,330. District Seat 15A, Seat 1, Brad Allen, 26,124. District Attorney Sean Boone, 24,782. County Commissioners, Steve Carter, 19,890. Anthony Pierce, 16,945. Craig Turner, 20,200. Clerk of Court, Meredith Edwards, 24,663. County Sheriff, Terry Johnson, 19,009. Kelly T. White, 15,981. Board of Education, Leonard Harrison, 4,731. Engel, 19,016. Chuck Marsh, 14,343. Charles Parker, 15,885. Seneca Rogers, 14,797. Avery Wagner, 9,974. There were 478 write-ins.
Wow.
Soil and Water, Otha Hawkins, 3,114. Willie Holiday, 10,671. David Moreau, 6,403. Richard Reed, 12,711. Donna Van Hook, 13,230. Randy Whitaker, 11,004, and there were 116 write-ins.
Whoa, wait a minute here. We read them back to you or anything like that?
As long as y'all are making sure. it all
Right,
sounds
right.
right.
You're buying gas, and that tends to drop down.
I'd add to that, it's, you don't get more complex and emotional an issue than abortion and abortion access. It's hard to put someone in one category, right? And then you also have the issue of after Dobbs, people went and said, wait a second, what is my state law? What is the law now? Because the Supreme Court sent it back to the states, and you have that complexity, and we may see it in Michigan, and where abortion's on the ballot, and the Democrat who is running for office may be in a position where she sees Republicans vote to keep abortion access and not vote for her.
But wasn't this a key strategic failure of the Democratic Party? They spent hundreds of millions of dollars on ads about women's health and abortion rights issues, and it didn't appear to help them in some of these races.
If you ask the Republicans right now, they would say it was a huge strategic failure. Yes, there are women out there concerned about their abortion rights. And some of them, what's it on my ballot across the country? I mean, if you've got inflation where it is, but if you've got inflation where it is, and you've got education numbers where they are, and you don't have a very good hand in immigration and crime, other issues, what are you going to do? And also Democrats,
And if you live in a state where all of a sudden you realize the Supreme Court didn't take away your abortion access, Nevada, I'm thinking about where it is protected, what are you seeing more? You are seeing the gas prices and the food prices and the things that impact you more
Yeah, it's
immediately. So it's
amazing.
not a time to
It's
listen.
7:30, people start calling.
Who won it?
So that's part of it. Harry's in this category, these four groups of influential voters, pressure parents, all of them. I was talking to a Democratic strategist who does a ton of field work, talking to voters, knocking on doors, listening to their concerns. And he said to me, look, what my party didn't understand is inflation was a psychological extension of COVID. It was ever present, it was everywhere, you couldn't get away from it. And because of that, all these other issues, which are important, did not resonate enough. And that's from someone who was talking to Democrats, door to door, hearing what their concerns were in relation to others. And for all four of these groups, if inflation is a psychological or practical extension of COVID, that matters to all of them.
Right, you would say COVID is still playing a role, Major, even as we.
In that sense, yes.
Still playing a role.
We're living. All right, stand by, everybody. Coming up in just a few minutes, polls will be closing for more than 64 million Americans in 15 states. We'll have the latest results. Arizona, Colorado, Michigan, New York, Texas, Wisconsin, Wyoming. More results coming.
The technical problem we are having with the absentee ballots from the one-stop sites, from mail-ins, has been solved. So the current numbers on the State Board of Elections website for early voting are our true totals for this election.
Accusations of harassment assault. Yes.
Things start.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to our CBS News Election Night headquarters in New York, and we have got some big news coming out of New Hampshire, that key Senate race there. We have a change in the CBS News rating. We can now characterize the Senate race in New Hampshire as leaning Democratic. This was one of the hopeful races. Republicans thought maybe they could defeat Senator Hassan, who was former governor there, political scientist at MIT. But that is a key change there. That does not mean that the Republicans would have to take New Hampshire if they want to have a big blowout. If they want to have a big blowout in terms of the Senate, but they still have other opportunities on the board. We should also know tonight that reporters at our CBS stations across the country have been closely following the races. Gail, I know you've been talking to some of them.
Yeah, I was talking to Jim Navidi from Florida. I talked to Jim yesterday. Jim, hello and welcome.
Thank you, Gail.
Yeah, it's really good to see you. Listen, we started the broadcast talking about the results in Florida. You had told us yesterday that if Miami-Dade goes red, forget about calling Florida a swing state anymore. How did they do it? It now appears to be ruby red, if I don't mind saying that to you.
No, right now, Governor Ron DeSantis is looking like he's up by about 1 million votes. To put that in context, 4 years ago, that was just 30,000 votes. This is unheard of. I've never seen an instance where somebody has turned things around this quickly. I will tell you that I think the biggest issue that helped Governor DeSantis was his response to the pandemic and COVID. I think you saw a lot of things come out of that, including upwards of 280,000 people moving into Florida, particularly from states in the Northeast, the so-called lockdown states. They came here, they were more affluent, they had money, they settled in Palm Beach, they came to Miami, and I think they made a real concerted effort to attract those folks, get them registered to vote. Also, while Democrats were really doing nothing in terms of investing in the infrastructure of the party across the state of Florida, Republicans have been courting Hispanic voters and people up and down from the Panhandle all the way to Miami, and that's paid off tonight. And as a result, I'm telling you, I think you can officially say that Florida is no longer a swing state. Florida is a red state.
Yeah, Governor DeSantis did seem to defy conventional wisdom when it came to COVID. Can you tell us about the relationship between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis? I know you talked to Donald Trump over the weekend. What is he saying to you about DeSantis in particular, after using that nickname, Ron DeSanctimonious?
Yeah, Ron DeSantis. He said it, he used it in Pennsylvania, then he came to Miami where I had a chance to interview him. He didn't really want to repeat the name here in DeSantis' backyard, but then as we saw earlier today, in news outlets, Fox News and others, he's starting to throw some more warning shots to DeSantis, telling him he better not, or otherwise he's going to be in real trouble. Let me tell you this, one reason why Donald Trump is worried about Ron DeSantis is Ron DeSantis raised more than $220 billion for this governor's race, more than any governor's race in the history of the United States, and I will tell you, he still has $90 million in the bank. And according to a recent FEC ruling, he can convert that money into a federal campaign if he chooses to use it in '94. That would make him the best financed Republican other than Donald Trump to potentially run in 2024. That's a real milestone for him. And he's got a lot of national votes that he's been courting, traveling around the states, getting people in Arizona and other places campaign for other candidates.
All right, Jim Navidi, thank you so much. You know, when money's involved, there's that great line, show me the money. You know exactly where it is.
Yeah, let's bring in Robert Costa and Nancy Cordes. And Robert, I know you've done a lot of reporting on the Republican side. What about that? I mean, does Ron DeSantis become, even with Trump potentially announcing, does he become a front runner just because of the $90 million he has in the bank in some of his contacts?
Okay, and just sign, pass it around. I think you all have to sign that.
Behind the scenes to not listen to whatever Trump is saying, to not be in any way dissuaded from thinking about 2024. And so are donors tonight, close to Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. In fact, behind the scenes, they tell CBS News that because Trump is looking early, potentially into 2024, there may be a sign of
They're talking about 2024.
I'll tell you that the White House is already very concerned.
I got your
about Ron
mileage.
DeSantis.
Okay,
I think clearly
that's fine.
consider him a possible contender in 2024. He's one of the few politicians that President Biden routinely name checks out on the campaign trail. He even called Ron DeSantis Donald Trump incarnate, whatever that means. And because it's not positive, it's not a good thing. That's not, I don't think it's a good thing. But you know, he's definitely someone that the president himself and the people around him are worried about. What does it say about the future of the Republican Party? It won't just be, even if Donald Trump declares, he won't clear the field, is what he hopes to do, right, Robert?
And I just was going over my interview with Kevin McCarthy, and McCarthy says, I said, look, do you give Trump credit for what happened tonight if the Republicans move toward winning the House? He said Trump was a tremendous amount of help. This is someone who's had some tension with Trump over January 6th from time to time. He said Trump was key for recruitment, key for endorsing, key for shaping the policy message. So what we're looking at right now is not only could Trump get back into politics, run for president again, should he announce next week, we're looking at a potential House GOP shaped by Trump allies, including McCarthy himself.
And that is part of what, when John was talking about the cushion that Kevin McCarthy as Republican leader would lead in the House, it's how raucous is the caucus that he ends up with. Does he need to offset a certain number of MAGA Republican Trump caucus that doesn't necessarily listen to Republicans?
And remember the history quickly. Newt Gingrich got kicked out and called his rested caucus cannibals. John Boehner called them political terrorists. And it's tough being Speaker of the Republican Party that has a caucus of the kind that Bob was just talking about.
All right, we'll have more on what's happened in Florida, the potential 2024 race ahead, and what is happening tonight. We are just minutes away from
That's right, he does have to be there.
states. The balance of power, the latest results from Arizona, Colorado, Michigan, New York, Texas, Wisconsin, and more. You're watching CBS News, America Decides.
Election night is in full swing and the races are heating up.
As the results come in, we're tracking all the important races for the Piedmont Triad, the state, and the country. Here's a look at the hot races right now in the U.S. Senate race. Democrat Sherry Beasley. It is a very close one. Sherry Beasley with 50% of the vote. Republican Ted Budd with 48%. Both are looking to replace Senator Richard Burr, who is not running for another term.
In another race, the Associated Press has called the District 4 House race. The votes are still coming in and being counted, but Democrat Valerie Fucci has secured more than 70% of the votes over Republican Courtney Geels. Fucci will replace Congressman David Price, who's held the District 4 seat for the last 25 years.
Now a look at the North Carolina House race for District 59. Incumbent Republican John Hardister has a close but lead over Democrat Sherry Young. You'll recall that Hardister is seeking his 6th term.
Now to the race for Guilford County Sheriff, Republican Phil Byrd is looking to unseat Democrat Denny Rogers.
WFY is Suzanne Lane joins us live now in Greensboro and Bird's camp as the results come in. We're at a watch party here tonight for Phil Byrd right here in Greensboro. You can see behind me dozens of people anxiously waiting for his results to finish rolling in. Now, one thing was Phil Byrd earlier, he said he is optimistic about tonight, the mingling with people, but everyone's eyes have been peeled onto the TV, waiting for those results to come in. Now, Byrd has had experience with Guilford County Sheriff's Office in the past, 30 years to be exact, when he worked there. One of his biggest goals throughout his campaign was the rescue violent crime. Byrd said he's worried about homicide rate in the county. He said, we've got a problem. Those were his words just a few weeks ago. He said, do this. It'll be a community effort involving everyone, community leaders, businesses, law enforcement, churches. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to head over and speak with Byrd right now, just to get his take on everything, see where he's headed at, and we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Amber, thank you. Let's check in on incumbent Sheriff Danny Rogers. Now City Moore is live at his watch party in Greensboro, where they are hoping for another term sitting.
Yeah, Chad, I'm here at Cooper Ale House. Of course, Sheriff Rogers is hoping to keep his seat after being sworn into office back in 2018. Take a look behind me on all the folks who are here tonight, friends, family, people from his campaign out supporting tonight. Earlier, he addressed this crowd, thanking them for their support. Now, Sheriff Rogers has several key mission points that he wants to continue, like reducing officer attrition rates, rebuilding law enforcement and citizen scholarships, and of course also reducing crime. And Sheriff Rogers told me that he had a busy day earlier today, talking to people out at poll sites, getting his face out there and continuing to engage with the community. We'll see how this election turns out. For now, live in Guilford County, Sydney Moore, WFNY News 2.
Our coverage continues with our Ben Briscoe. Ben has a closer look at the U.S. Senate race.
Speaking of close, this race just keeps getting closer and closer. A minute and a half ago when we started this cut-in, I was looking at this votes behind the leader, and it was like 60,000 votes that Ted Budd was behind. Right now, take a look. He's behind only about 43,000, so it is closing just that fast. This reminds me a lot of what happened during the presidential election. Originally, early voting showed that Joe Biden was up in North Carolina, but take a look at how that turned out. He was just edged out by President Donald Trump in this election. You can see Biden ended with about 74,000 votes down. One of the things we're really looking at is the heat map of how strong each county is going for each candidate. At this point, you expect all the big cities to be really strong for Sherry Beasley. You can see some of them are not that strong. They're kind of weak. And I do want to point out, Wayne County is an anomaly here. We're being told that some of the results are not going to come in until like 11 o'clock tonight. So we're going to have to keep an eye and see if that changes things. But right now, you can tell that this is getting closer and closer. Look, it's now the 36,000 votes that he's behind.
Ben, thank you. That wraps it up for us here. Our election coverage continues online.
Our team is giving you extended coverage. It's streaming on WFNYNewsTube.com, YouTube, and WFNY Plus. We'll bring you another live update here on WFNY in just 30 minutes. We'll see you then.
Tonight, America decides the biggest night in politics. The balance of power hangs in the balance. We're going to take you inside the states. Everyone is watching the polls just closing in Arizona, Colorado, Michigan, New York, Texas, Wisconsin, and more. So lots of results to share with you. Our election coverage continues right now.
Y'all ready to close this thing out?
As your governor, I'm getting our rights back.
Now, this something new with this short November. I'll show up for 6 more years.
All right.
The House and the U.S. Senate.
Already an exciting night. Welcome to our CS News Election Night headquarters with our powerhouse political team. And we are breaking down the biggest races in America and the key issues that voters care most about. As we mentioned, polls just closed more than 64 million Americans in 15 states. And right now we have some breaking news to report. CS News can rate the House as leaning Republican. We also have some new reporting from our chief election and campaign correspondent, Robert Costa.
Good news, I've been speaking with House Majority Whip James Clyde. He is the highest ranking Black American in Congress, a crucial figure in the entire Biden presidency during that primary. He says tonight to CBS News, his entire party is at a crossroads tonight. Should the GOP win the House? I asked him tonight, should President Biden run in 2024? He said, well, I'm not going to say whether anybody should run in 2024. I said, will you run for the House leadership again? Should the leadership slate lose? He said, it all depends on what happens tonight. So there's a lot of talk behind the scenes of what this means for the Democratic Party. For so long now, led by President Biden and Speaker Pelosi, could be facing changes down the line.
Yeah, we're waiting on so many of these canaries in the coal mine, these House races we're waiting for in Virginia, in New York, Indiana, the votes still coming in to see if this is going to be a Republican ripple or a Republican wave or tsunami or however you want to characterize it tonight, John.
What's crucial is what I'm saying is from a leader of the Democratic Party, usually the second guessing starts in the rank and file. It works its way up to the leadership. This is second guessing going on within the leadership already in the Democratic Party, even before the results are in.
What does it say to you, Bob? It says they're extremely worried, does it not?
They are very worried. that their voters aren't turning out, the core voters aren't turning out, and he says their party's not clicking on messaging. He believes that President Biden, when it comes to the rescue plan and other policies, has the right policy agenda, but he doesn't believe it's breaking through with voters.
All right, let's get straight to the results for the polls that have just closed. Polls have just closed, we noted in Arizona, a key state at this hour. The Senate race there is a toss-up. We're going to be watching this very closely all night. The closely watched Arizona governor's race between Republican Carrie Lake and Democrat Katie Hobbs, also a toss-up at this hour. And in Wisconsin, the Senate race there, a toss-up. Just too soon to make a projection there. The governor's race in the Badger State, also a toss-up at this hour. And in Colorado, we can report the Senate race is lean Democratic with incumbent Senator Bennett there. And here in New York, the polls just closed, and it's lean Democratic. Lee Zeldin, the congressman there, running a tough race against the woman running up the first female governor of New York, using the issue of crime and inflation to badger her on the issues. We also want to know here is where the House and the Senate stand at this hour, because control hangs in the balance. As we noted, lean Republican for the Republican Party, and the Senate just too close to call at this hour. A toss up there. Let's bring in our teams here about that $1 billion battle for the U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Arizona. We talked about it. Major and Anthony breaking down all the data tonight.
So, Nora, a few moments ago, you told our audience that New Hampshire has shifted, and it was an important shift. And every night, all night tonight, when we go through this process, toss up to leave either Republican or Democrat, we want to come to the board in those very close watch races and explain how we got to that decision. Anthony, walk us through New Hampshire and the Senate race there.
Something repeating again. Everywhere you look in New Hampshire right now, Magnuson is leading in the county. So leading that towards the Democratic wall. We are still only around a quarter voted, only 23% in. So we're still early. But we want to get this real-time update, and that's what that represents.
And that 23%, we should not regard as, oh my gosh, there's all this voter. How could you possibly do that? It's consistent with other data that underlies that vote that's in, and we expect it to come in.
This is the pattern we see.
Now, Norm, we want to catch you also on a very closely watched race in Georgia. We talked about this over and over and over again for the last 6 weeks, because it may hold the key ultimately to control of that body. Let's go to Georgia, explain what we are.
Well, when you see a map like this, you see a lot of red, and you see some blue. Blue are Democratic voting areas right now, counties voting Democratic, and are Republican voting. We often say the Democrat at the data desk, land doesn't vote. So what I want to do is show you the story, which is Metro Atlanta, so important to Democratic fortunes. They need high turnout there. Just to give you a quick bit of history, right, if I look at the 2020 presidential race, again, Joe Biden, when he won Georgia, won these counties around metro area. Diversity, diversifying, fast growing, all of that. So what we're going to do, Major, is I'm going to show folks where the vote comes from. I'm going to tilt the state on its side, and these higher bars mean there's more vote in these counties, and that is Metro Atlanta. If the Democrats are going to do well, Raphael Warnock is going to do well. These bars need to get really high. In other words, they need to account for a very sizable portion of all the vote cast in the state. And that's how a Democrat wins the state if they do.
Elevations equal people, Nora. We'll be watching those elevations all night long in Georgia and across the country.
So forgive me, does that suggest that Warnock has been able to turn out his voters in those Atlanta suburbs?
Not so far yet. We're still watching the count come in there. It's a picture of just how high these bars get. Right now, the exit polls suggested not quite. Democrats are okay, but not quite the targets I would think the Democrats want.
Right, Margaret Brennan is moderator of Face the Nation. Margaret.
This is obviously going to be one of the key races in Georgia and Pennsylvania when you talk to Republican leaders that they bring up consistently as the races they are most focused in on in terms of getting that 52 number that Rick Scott, sort of chief coach for the Senate team, has laid out. But, you know, what some of the other trends that we are watching right now, I'm looking at a state like Michigan and the vote coming in here. I mean, this is one of those states, along with Pennsylvania, that has seen a bit of a sluggish economic recovery. And it's a state that's got some interesting trending. You've got Democrats, to get to your point earlier, Nora, about perhaps missteps in messaging. You had Alyssa Slotkin, Congresswoman running for re-election there, who said as a Democrat that she regrets that they don't have a better way to tell their story because she's seeing how hard it is in her race in the state of Michigan, in the state of Pennsylvania, which we're also watching right now.
But how is it the Democrats and Joe Biden who passed the IRA, right, Inflation Reduction Act, and made such a big deal about that with lowering prescription drugs? How could they not connect that to the issue of inflation? I mean, they named it the Inflation Reduction
Right,
Act.
they did, but the things that they are looking to offset, like drug prices, first of all, it doesn't take effect till January, and secondly, that's not when we're seeing inflation, we're seeing it in gas, we're seeing it in food, we're seeing, just the cost of living generally, exactly. So it's a, what have you done for me lately, sort of feeling there, so that's part of the messaging problem, but it's also, it is kind of astounding that in a state like Michigan, in an area like Detroit, where you have so much money, to your point, coming with these rescue packages to come build up the electric vehicle industry. I mean, this is a place that would benefit, but it wasn't resonating.
We're also getting some new information on what drove voters to the polls and why. Vladimir Duthier has our latest CBS News exit polls lab.
Nora, we wanted to give our viewers a really quick update on what's going on in the Senate race in Arizona. Battleground state, of course, we know. Let's take a look here. Between the incumbent Senator Mark Kelly and Blake Masters, check it out. White women, Mark Kelly is doing very, very well. White men, Masters has the edge, and suburbs are evenly split. What's really interesting to note about this, Nora, is that back in 2020, President Trump is the one with white women, and now you see current polling indicates Captain Mark Kelly has that edge.
All right, we're going to keep digging into those exit polls in Arizona because so much at stake there. Arizona is a state that President Biden turned blue, remember, in the last election. And tonight there are a lot of very important races there. CBS's Chris Van Cleave is in Phoenix with some breaking news, Chris.
Well, Nora, there have been some voting issues with machines in Maricopa County, the biggest county in Arizona. The Lake and Masters campaigns sued to try to keep the polls open until 10 p.m. A judge ruled against them. The polls have closed. We should get our first batch of voting numbers in about an hour. That'll be 8 o'clock. Early vote for Democrats as the night goes on. We'll get numbers from today's vote that should favor Republicans. Or any early vote, and most of the state early votes that came in between Saturday and tonight won't be counted until tomorrow. If these races are really as close as people think, we may not be able to even guess who won. So we know how many votes were actually cast.
All right, Chris Van Cleave in Arizona, where it looks like the party has started early. Let's talk more about those voting issues from Arizona's Maricopa County. David Becker is our election law contributor and also co-wrote the book, The Big Truth Upholding Democracy in the Age of the Big Lie. David, what do you make of what's going on in Maricopa County?
What we saw in Maricopa County very early in the day was there were some polling sites where the tabulators, the big machines where you feed the ballots in, they were not accepting those machines. It turns out there was a printing error on some of the ballots. But those machines are also equipped with secure ballot boxes on the side that are locked. So if that ever happens, there's actually a plan for this. The voters just put those ballots into the box and they're tabulated after the polls close. The plaintiffs in this case, the RNC and the Masters and Lake campaign, waited a long time throughout the day. It seems like the court really reflected on that and said you waited a very, very long time. You came right before the polls closed, and so there wasn't anything to do at this point. And there was also no evidence that any voter didn't get a ballot or was disenfranchised in Maricopa.
But what do you think? Do you think someone's trying to sow some doubts about the process?
I mean, that
And y'all
was
see
going on.
our friend Dan's
We've seen throughout the day.
He's on top right now.
Who's that?
Dan Eagle.
Oh,
He's a
Yeah.
former board member.
Yeah.
Well, you're sitting in the seat.
Currently, it's on top.
Unfortunate because now the election officials are doing the real work. They're counting all the ballots in the counting centers, and I hope there's nothing that happens in there.
You're looking at live voting right now in Arizona. I mean, people still in line there. David, as you look across the landscape, I know you
Try
talk
to keep
to
your edge. You go as
secretaries
soon.
of state all across the country. Have you seen any real problems?
It's remarkable. It's been a really quiet day in many ways. There's been the lines that we expect in some places, some greater than others. There have been a few troubles here and there. That happens when you have 100 million people doing the same thing at the same time. There's 1,000 volunteers.
Yeah, I guess if there's more elections or undefeated in the last couple of elections.
Wow, well, that is something to do with state of democracy. It's working, it is slow, but it is working. Coming up, one of the top issues for voters is crime,
You're about to
especially
come,
in
right?
Wisconsin. New reporting from team on the ground there and discuss the issue that Republicans use against their Democratic opponents. America Decides. This is CBS News.
Arkansas's got a millennial governor, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty wild, right?
Who's on it with Jardians?
Pretty back to done. We're the ones getting it done.
We're back on Type 2 Diabetes. And Harper's.
On it with Jardians.
Join the growing number of people who are on it with the once-daily pill Jardians. Jardians not only lowers A1C, it goes beyond to reduce the risk of cardiovascular death in adults with Type 2 diabetes and no heart disease. And Jardians may help you lose some weight.
Jardians may cause serious side effects, including ketoacidosis, that may be fatal, dehydration, and contagious cellulose, kidney function, just urinary tract infections. A rare life-threatening bacterial infection is
You seen it, Ron
Stop
Osborne?
taking Jardians and call your doctor right away if you have symptoms of this infection, ketoacidosis, or allergic reaction, and don't take it if you
He's like, I don't
Take your
care.
Jardians medicine one
Yeah.
day a week.
Yeah.
May cause blood sugar.
One steady pill that goes beyond lowering A1C.
We're on it. We're on it with Jardians.
Ask your doctor about Jardians.
How much does it cost to eat Jardians?
Almost double.
What are the words that are used to
That's for
describe
president of the
Parents.
Nice to meet you.
Your mom, she's not my baby. You think that was smart or dumb?
Tell this at Young Sheldon. Thursday on CBS.
We're ready to change things. We're ready to bring people together all across this country.
It's not somebody else's fight, this is our fight, and it's a fight we absolutely must win.
We want to turn now to Wisconsin, where you see Senator Ron Johnson. He's the only Republican senator running for re-election in a state that President Biden won. This is a state that could make history if it elected its first black senator. Adriana Diaz is following this race and joins us. Hi there, Adriana. So tell us what were some of the key issues in that contest.
Well, Nora, just like you said, crime was one of the top issues for Ron Johnson. We are at his watch party. He's back behind me somewhere working the room, and he's really hammered Lawrence on crime, trying to link him to calls to defund the police, releasing prisoners on parole. And crime is really top of mind for many voters here. A Republican voter came up to us saying it's one of her top issues, but Barnes has really fought back, saying that it's just being used to deflect attention away from larger issues like reproductive rights and the economy. Barnes argues that Senator Johnson has left the middle class behind.
And what are you hearing from the campaigns there? I mean, who does this race favor at this early hour?
Well, a source with the Democratic Party here in Wisconsin told me that he is feeling noxiously optimistic. On the other side, a source with the GOP party here in Wisconsin said that he's really encouraged by turnout. And every single voter that we spoke to out there, outside those polling stations, told us they were surprised by turnout. I spoke to a poll worker in Milwaukee in an area that's predominantly black. She told me she was taken aback by turnout. So that's really the focus right now. We'll just have to see if the numbers match that.
Adriana Diaz, thank you so much. As I mentioned, crime has been a major issue in the state.
That's quite the description, nauseously optimistic. I've been feeling nauseously optimistic since I was so it's very interesting to see what's happening in Wisconsin.
Whether they turn out the youth so well. I mean, on that, we're talking about one of the big issues there was crime. The Republican issues that, throughout the country. Let's bring in our political correspondent, Caitlin Huey Burns. And Caitlin, you've done some great reporting on this for the CBS Evening News in different states. Explain what you've heard, you've seen as you talk to so many voters.
Hi, Nora. Great to be with you. Yeah, we've been in Wisconsin. I was just in Pennsylvania. And the issue of crime has come up not only among Republican voters, but also among Democratic voters. They are feeling this very acutely. We were out on a canvassing group in this areas around Philadelphia over the weekend. This was a Democratic canvassing group, union workers trying to canvass and knock on doors in minority communities. And they said that was the issue that came up over and over again as they were knocking on doors. That Democratic voters, or those who might be inclined to even vote for Democrats, were concerned about the issue of crime. Now, Republicans have spent millions of dollars on the airwaves talking about this issue, really trying to ramp up support. And Republican operatives that I have spoken to said that the economy and inflation has been pretty baked into the numbers, but they have seen crime as something that has changed the game in terms of their messaging and attracting voters in the final weeks.
It really is an interesting point about how Republicans have used this message very powerfully. John Nichols.
In Milwaukee, it matters. Crime is up 40%. It's the fourth largest rise in the country, and in homicides, it's been up 40% in Milwaukee. So it's an acute problem right there that the airways are full of. It's also an abortion story because Mandela Barnes in the Senate race has tried to run and increase the discussion about abortion. What happened in Wisconsin may be seen later in the country, which is
It's tough. You see what they're swarming around.
yes, abortion's important. They don't like the decision on Dobbs, but in the list of things that are most important, it's number 6. So they don't like Dobbs, the decision they want to know, but it's something they're doing.
Crime has also been a big issue here in New York City and in this state. Congressman Lee Zeldin has used that as a hammer against Kathy Hochul. Let's take a quick look at that board to see, because at this hour, we are rating this race as lean Democratic, and we'll continue to update on that race. Let's bring in Jeff McGee. He is our Chief National Affairs and Justice Correspondent. Jeff, you cover this issue of crime. Break it down.
Yeah, what is so interesting is that some of these homicide numbers and murder numbers are going down, but when people see on their TV, especially here in New York, are these images of people getting attacked in the subway system, that's where they go every day, especially in this city. In other cities across the country, you see carjackings, you see burglaries into homes. So while the murder numbers might be coming down, it's those crimes that really hit close to home for people to think they're safe that is resonating out there as these folks go to the polls.
And older voters are far more likely than younger ones to see violent crime as a key election issue. We'll have more of that coming up, and we will be right back. You're watching CS News, America Decides.
Nice. Why? You're along with tell people that they will customize your car insurance. Pay for what's wrong. Shoot. I'm a fighter. Yeah. You're an asshole. We're not about that. Only paying for what you need. Liberty, 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 liberty. If advanced lung cancer has you searching for possibilities, discover a different first treatment. Immunotherapy is one of your immune system to attack cancer. But Opdivo plus Yervoy is the first combination of 2 immunotherapies for adults newly diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer that spread. Tests positive for PD-L1. It is not an abnormal EGFR or LG. Opdivo plus Yervoy is not chemotherapy. It works differently. It helps your immune system fight cancer in 2 different ways. Opdivo and Yervoy can cause your immune system to harm healthy parts of your body during and after treatment. These problems can be severe and deadly. See your doctor right away if you have a cough, chest pain, shortness of breath, irregular heartbeat, diarrhea, constipation, severe stomach pain, severe nausea or vomiting, dizziness, fainting, eye problems, extreme tiredness, changes in appetite, thirst or urine, rash, itching,
I don't think I need that little table over there in the corner for anything else tonight. I don't know.
Probably not. Do you need it?
I'd love to have it if I can get it.
Tell your doctor about all the conditions.
I'm running out of space on my shelf to put books.
For sure. Seriously? One up the power of United States. Any further questions? One up the power of Tide Pods Ultra Oxy. We have the eyes open now. 2015.
Right now, punish. Sunshine State, perhaps setting him up as one of the leading contenders for the 2024 presidential race. We're also getting new information at this hour on what drove voters to the polls in why and a potential gender gap in the state of Pennsylvania. But we're continuing to see what those exit polls give us.
So we wanted to give our viewers an update on what's happening in the state of Pennsylvania, specifically to your point about the gender gap. Take a look at these numbers. Dr. Mary Oz is doing very, very well with men versus Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. But check it out. Look at this. When it comes to women, John Fetterman, 57% of the vote. We know that in Pennsylvania, what's top of mind for men? Inflation, top of mind for women, abortion.
Margaret Brennan on that very issue. Really interesting how that's sort of breaking out what we'll need for the final results.
It is, because we're going to be talking about the state quite a lot tonight. But for Senator, potential future.
I'll see you till the next election. Y'all have a good
Thanksgiving,
good Christmas. Thanks for all your help.
Thank you. Because that means it's not a live issue, but it is resonating with women. And that's very interesting. So, potential Senator Fetterman has said he does support at a national level crafting a law that would codify Roe. That's what President Biden has said. That means that abortion would be legal up to the 24th week of pregnancy, and then if the life of the mother is in danger.
You don't want to slice the bologna too thin on exit polls, but if that 42 number is right, he's doing worse. Oz is doing worse among women in Pennsylvania than Donald Trump did, who got 44% of the female vote in Pennsylvania in 2020, a year that was terrible for Donald Trump with women.
And Robert, what is your sense of that?
I just sat down with Lieutenant Governor Fetterman and also covered Oz in suburban Philadelphia. That's where God's campaign's really looking. Women in suburban Philadelphia. You know what he said to that crowd? When you go out and talk to your friends, talk about the economy, talk about crime, talk about immigration, don't talk about anything else. That's the way to appeal to women.
We should check back in on Bucks County with Major Garrett and Anthony Salvanto coming up. Also, we're just about 30 minutes away from polls.
You wanted 337. We're getting a clear picture of tonight's winners and losers.
We are on top of all the important races across the triad, our state, and the entire country.
Here's a close look at a very close and important race. The U.S. Senate
No,
race
she don't care
between
that
Democrat Sherry Beasley and Republican Ted Budd. And just minutes ago, we saw these two candidates flip. Ted Budd now has 15% of the vote. Sherry Beasley with 48%.
Now to the Forsyth County Sheriff's race, where incumbent Bobby Kimbrough is up against Ernie Leyva. Kimbrough has a sizable lead with 70% of the vote, Ernie Leyva with 40%.
We're also monitoring the U.S. House District 6 race. It's incumbent Democrat Kathy Manning versus Republican Christian Castelli. Right now, Kathy Manning has 55% of the vote. Christian Castelli with 44%, 22% precincts are voting.
Let's check on that District 6 race. WFMY News Houston Run Holman is live in Greensboro, where Kathy Manning is hoping for another term.
Good evening. I am live in downtown Greensboro, and Ellen Bain, where Representative Kathy Manning is hosting a viewing party. We have several dozen people who have come in to support as we continue to see those election and those votes come on in. Right now, according to our website, Manning is leading against her opponent, Christian Castelli, and supporters of her race have informed us that she is expected to take the podium sometime around 9:30 or 10 o'clock, so we are keeping a big eye on that one. Just to give you a little bit of background around this race, Manning was elected back in 2020, where in that race, she actually won by more than 50% of the votes, so I can imagine she's filled with confidence tonight. She has generated millions in fundraising towards this race. Again, she is expected to take the stage within the next 30 minutes or so, and we'll have that sound for you tonight on WFM Live News 2 at 11. Reporting live in downtown Greensboro, WFM Live News 2.
Laura, thanks. Let's check in now with Avery Powell at Christian Castelli's watch party in Greensboro. Avery.
Still waiting for Christian Castelli to arrive. County GOP is holding a watch party, but there's lots of excitement here tonight. We just heard from the Silver County GOP leaders who are saying they're hoping in the future they can have less meetings. Christian Castelli, this is his first run for public office, but he has a long military career. More than 20 years. He left the U.S.
Still waiting for him to get here. I haven't gotten the invitation with me while we're live, but this race has yet to be called. We'll see what happens.
Gary, thank you. Let's continue our team coverage with our Ben Briscoe. Ben, you're able to pinpoint which areas are favoring certain candidates.
Okay, so it's pretty much what you would expect, right? The Democratic areas of our state are going for Sherry Beasley. The Republican areas are going for Ted Buck. But with our technology, you can not only see that map, but you can see how strongly they're going for each candidate. I want to show you Sherry Beasley doing really well in the Chapel Hill area, taking 77% of the vote almost. You saw that change live on air there. Over in Durham, more than 80% of the vote. But this has been a big shocker for political scientists tonight. Down here in Mecklenburg County, this should be a lot stronger according to them. They were expecting this to be around 85% of the vote. Right now, you can see she has just about 68% of the vote in Mecklenburg County. Guilford County, 62%, and Forsyth, 59%. Now, because of that, we just talked to some from Ted Budd's campuses. They expect him to take the stage and declare victory in the next 20, 30 minutes. Again, that's only Ted Budd's camp. We do not have official word on that yet.
Thank you. We've got live continuing coverage online right now. We are streaming our digital election show on WFNYnews2.com, also on YouTube and on WFN1 Plus. You can find that on Roku or Fire TV.
And all night, this is the team to keep you in the know. We have another live update in about 30 minutes right here on WFN1.
Welcome back to our CS News election headquarters here in New York, and good evening to those of you that are just joining us. It is 9:30 in the East, and polls are now closed in 41 states, and we're starting to get new clues about who could take control of the House and the Senate. Right now, CBS News rates the House as leaning Republican. It is still early in the night, and there are lots of results coming in. We also have some new reporting from Robert Costa, our chief election and campaign correspondent. Hey, Rob.
Just been speaking to some people inside President Biden's circle, and that is some longtime confidants. But how are we seeing this moment tonight? Potentially, the Republicans taking over the House. They say that he believes the next year could be, quote, brutal. He has no illusions about the House Republicans should have majority. They'll come after his family, including probing his son, Hunter Biden. They're going to maybe possibly impeach members of his cabinet. He knows that. Maybe even try to impeach him. He also said something interesting behind the scenes to a few of his friends in recent days. That if Republicans win the House, and something like the debt limit comes up, he's going to work through Senator McConnell, not Kevin McCarthy, should Kevin McCarthy be Speaker. He has a long-time relationship with McConnell. That could be the path to governing. Biden confidants tell CBS News tonight.
What does that say to you that he's already thinking in those terms?
Well, he's watching the returns, and he's hoping the Democrats do well. All the Democrats watching this tonight hope they still hold on in the House. But he's also thinking ahead as President of the United States. His confidence say about what governing could look like if it's divided government. Who could he lean on to cut a deal on something like the debt limit? And to him, McConnell's that person, not McCarthy.
Do you think anybody will challenge Mitch McConnell?
Rick Scott has long been rumored the Florida senator as being very ambitious. But if McConnell wins big tonight, as they say in that show, The Wire, if you come at the king, you best not miss. Senator Rick Scott, he doesn't want to lose the lead.
With a wire
If you read Mitch, I was just thinking about Scott going against McConnell. McConnell knows what he's doing. Mitch McConnell wrote in his book, The Long Game, about negotiating with President Obama. And he said the president's way of interacting and negotiating was utterly unproductive. Who did he then talk about as being a productive negotiating partner? Joe Biden. And he said, because Joe, on the other hand, made no effort to convince me I was wrong, he took my politics as a given, and I did the same. In other words, creatures of the Senate who know how far they can go with what they can do, and they can work with each other. And that's Mitch McConnell saying favorable things about Joe Biden, which is the pathway Bob's talking about that Biden would hope to use to get something done with the majority leader.
But really, how much is going to get done with a Republican Senate majority leader if the Republicans control the House and are clawing at Biden at every single step? Investigations, impeachment of cabinet members, all the things that you've already outlined, Robert.
It's going to be very incremental. Biden confidant say he's not looking for any kind of ambitious bipartisan governing. This is not going to likely be Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan or Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton in the mid-90s. This is going to be survival in the sense of just getting the debt limit extended.
That's the most important thing, the debt limit, because if McCarthy plays footsie with defaulting on the debt limit, you have an economic collapse. And McConnell would be somebody that the president could reason with on that point.
I want to let everybody see kind of the latest results that are just coming in as we talk about the balance of power in Washington and across the country. Let's go first to Pennsylvania. This hour, the governor's race there lean Democratic towards Attorney General Josh McDonnell. Many people think he will soon become a leader in the Democratic Party as well. In Georgia, the Senate race, a toss-up, a close race between Republican Herschel Walker and current Senator Raphael Warnock. Look at those numbers coming in. Also in the Peach State, the CBS News rating is lean Republican, and incumbent Governor Brian Kemp winning in that rematch and doing well. Many people wondering whether he can hold his former Republican across the finish line there. We also want to look at the Ohio Senate just real quickly. The CBS News rating for Senate is lean Republican for the author of Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance, in that race there. Also still quite close. As I mentioned, we want to look at the 10 battleground races in the Senate. These are the races that could decide which party wins the majority. And we're going to highlight it like this. I hope this is helpful to everybody as the night goes on in terms of Republicans, remember, to pick off one of the Democratic seats in order to win the majority. And let's look at the battle for control of Congress as well. My eyesight is not that good. I can't see that far. Balance power, that is the Senate, I think. There you go. 38. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's go over to Major Garrett and Anthony Salvanto. Major.
So Nora, we talked earlier this evening about these influencers in the election for this midterm election, and we identified pressured parents. We said they would be important. Anthony Salvanto can now explain new data that we just uncovered to explain how important and why.
So we have CBS News exclusive polling of voters, including voters we talked to today. What is the motivation behind the vote? And I want to focus in on pressured parents because they're so important. We talked about them. Their kids were stressed by the COVID pandemic. Now they're stressed by inflation. Look at this, Major. Not only that, but they have school-age children. They think Joe Biden could be doing more. Their key issues were the economy. I can report right now that pressured parents started out as 13% of the electorate before this election, based on our estimate.
Sometimes
Tonight, they're 19% of the electorate, so they have even more influence than we originally thought. And here's the key. They started out being 47%.
Yeah, right. What's new?
That's what it is.
No, who cares?
They started out at 47% Republican. It is now up to 51%. And that's so important because they are effectively influencing this election. It is swinging towards the Republicans, the projections yet, but it's swinging towards the Republicans. And this is a big reason why.
And one of the things we're so proud of about this, Anthony, is because these pressured parents cross over demographic groups that slice the electorate in ways that felt restricted to people watching it and trying to absorb who these people were and what they were likely to do.
It's real people describing themselves in real terms. It cuts across, as you say, all demographic groups. There are all racial groups, there are all age groups within, a certain range. That is so important here.
Nor we told you they were influential about 45 minutes ago. They're even more influential than we knew when we first described them to you because they're a larger percentage and they're breaking in a discernible way, which might influence trend lines throughout the night.
That's incredibly interesting to hear. And Margaret Brennan, you and I have talked about this. These are parents who are just fed up. This is actually the first election that is post-pandemic, right? Post-January 6th, post-Roe, right? And so there's a lot at stake where people are feeling uneasy,
out of control, as the polls have shown, out of control. And they have good reason to feel that way. Looking at the mental health crisis, the formula crisis, the COVID crisis, the pediatric hospitalizations right now are at this incredible level up and down many cities in the United States. I'm looking at stats on education. 74% of public schools in this country have full or part-time vacancies according to the education department. They don't have teachers, they don't have bus drivers, they don't have people in their everyday lives that they need to encounter to help parent their children. National average test score declines in math for 4th and 8th graders, largest ever recorded. People feel out of control, they can measure it, and they've been through it and they are exhausted. And that reestablishment of control, whether you see these culture war issues that come up, we talk a lot about that. It's harder to solve these problems, and it's not clear that these problems get solved in the next 2 years.
Okay, so voters and pressured parents want change. Is it the Democratic Party didn't explain what they would do, or the Republican Party has a better message?
Well, one of the things we talked about on Face the Nation last Sunday with an economist, Emily Oster, was this idea of pandemic amnesty. And people still seem to be caught in this argument of, should the schools have closed? When should they have closed? Should my kids wear a mask? Should they not? And she's saying, stop. Let's talk about how we make up for the deficiencies. Is it putting them in summer school, or is it getting them tutors? How do we fix it? And this is the risk in so many ways for Republican leadership. If they hold it, if they just go to investigations, and in 2 years there's no solution.
But I also hear parents say, Margaret, listen, I'm doing the right thing, I'm working hard, I'm paying my taxes, I'm paying my bills, I'm doing all the right things, and I'm still failing. So they need somebody to blame. And they do seem to have a lot of income, no matter what they do.
I think we've all heard these conversations. We've had these conversations.
Also, the Democrats tried to meet these parents where they were pressured by passing a series of pieces of legislation or parts to the Build Back Better legislation that really dealt with these pressured feelings. For example, you can't go to work if your child is home because of COVID, so you need child care. That's just it didn't pass. So you don't get credit for the things that didn't pass.
Exactly, and to build on Margaret's excellent point, I've been speaking tonight to Congressman Tim Ryan, who just saw was in a very close Senate race in Ohio, and he told CBS News tonight as he's watching these returns that the party, the Democratic Party, can't tell people the economy is doing well. He says you have to tell people it's not doing well, understand their pain, you've got to level with them. He said that's how he's been able to keep this race close in Ohio, because he speaks directly to the struggle people are feeling. He worries that his party nationally is not doing that.
And people are feeling that some of the stuff that happened during the pandemic, in terms of Republican governors decided to open up earlier than Democratic governors, and that has played into some of the angst that exists.
Nora, we still don't have a paid family leave policy in this country. This was supposed to be a marquee issue for Speaker Pelosi, who wanted it. She kept putting it back in the bill with the back of the McCarthy's not going to do that. That's the crossroads. But you do have these other parts of the Republican Party. Marco Rubio had put forward a paid leave bill that didn't go anywhere. Andrew Trump had tried to do it. There are Republicans who would like paid family leave. It's just, does anything get done? Can you do anything bipartisan?
All right, I want to bring in Scott McFarland, who covers Congress for us, for an issue we've not touched on tonight, because you're over at the Democracy Desk. We have been at CBS News airing elections since the 1940s, but this is the first time we put a Democracy Desk on these important issues. Scott?
The question is, does everything you just discussed transcend the issue of democracy? President Biden and many Democrats have said democracy is on the ballot tonight. There isn't just a stream or a trickle. There's a tidal wave of election-denying candidates on the ballot. 308 in the federal or statewide races, including a majority of those running for the U.S. House for Republicans. What do we mean by election denialism? Candidates that meet one of any of these 6 criteria, including those who sowed seeds of doubt about the 2020 election, those who question the legitimacy of President Biden's election, and they're not just in some states. They're in 48 states across the country at the statewide or federal level. They're doing well so far, the election denialism candidates. It's an indication that democracy as an issue, Nora, is just not resonating on those issues you just described.
Scott McFarland.
What does that mean, Scott, for just a second? Because, the Democrats hit the democracy issue very hard, but it doesn't seem to resonate, as you said, with voters, because they're thinking, when you look at what they care about, it's the prices, it's crime, it's the economy. Democracy is not on the list. Republicans also said that democracy matters to people. Why is that not resonating? Don't we all want a democracy?
There are so many voters who are worried about what's right in front of them at this moment versus this long-term aspiration for all Americans that democracy stay intact. I'll tell you though, if this election were being held January 7th, 2021, might have landed more powerfully with America, which saw that horrific, unique American moment.
Scott McFarland, all right, coming up, we'll talk with Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin about how the night is shaping up for Republicans and those key House races. In his state, you're watching CSA's America Decides.
The ABCs of CKD. A is for awareness, because knowing that your chronic kidney disease and type 2 diabetes with progressive dialysis is important. B is for believing that there may be more you can do.
We'll be back, y'all. 11 didn't close the machine, so we gotta take the stick back because it was down.
Because they don't close them at one stop and he cut
Corindian is a once-daily tablet that treats CKD differently than type 2 diabetes medications to help slow the progression of kidney damage and reduce the risk of cardiovascular events, such as heart attacks. Do not take Corindian if you have problems with your adrenal glands or take certain medications called CYP3 and 4 inhibitors.
Catch one down the hall.
Which is potassium levels. Ask your doctor before taking products containing potassium. Corindian can also cause low blood pressure and low sodium. So now that you know your ABCs, remember K is for kidneys. And if you need help slowing kidney damage, ask your doctor about Corindian. Good checkup? No, great checkup. Oh, thank you, Doc.
For great checkups, Crest has you covered. Because Crest Pro Health protects 100% of your mouth for 24 hours.
I mean, we're talking dental all day.
Densify Crest Pro Health. Like bones, your teeth lose density over time, but Crest has you covered. Crest Densify actively rebuilds tooth density to extend the life of teeth. Crest, the #1 toothpaste brand in America. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. Every 15 seconds, our professional monitoring agents receive a call for help. These are on the way. They use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture evidence and verify a threat is real, so you can get faster police response. Because in here, your safety is the only thing that matters. Advanced home security with 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
For adults with generalized myasthenia gravis who are positive for acetylcholine receptor antibodies, it may feel like the world is moving without you. But the picture is changing with VYVGART. In a clinical trial, participants achieved improved daily abilities with VYVGART added to their current treatment. And VYVGART helped clinical trial participants achieve reduced muscle weakness.
Wasn't very good, very close.
VYVGART may increase the risk of infection. In a clinical study, the most common infections were urinary tract and respiratory tract infections. Telling the doctor you have these two infections or you have symptoms
Yeah, it's usually one of the last ones to report.
VYVGART can cause allergic reactions. The most common side effects include respiratory tract infection, headache, and urinary tract infection. Picture your life in motion with VYVGART, a treatment designed using a fragment of an antibody. Ask your neurologist if VYVGART can be right for you.
Welcome back to our CBS News election night coverage. We have breaking news in the Colorado Senate race. CBS News projects that Michael Bennet will win re-election in the U.S. Not a huge surprise, but Democrats are breathing a sigh of relief in that state. Also, the state we're following at this hour is the state of Virginia and some key House races there. Let's bring in Major Garrett at our data board. Major.
So, Noah, Virginia is a place that Republicans and Democrats circled on the map as an early indicator of trend lines, really important trend lines for the midterm elections tonight. So we take you to the 2nd District of Virginia. This is Elaine Luria, member of the January 6th committee, representing this part of Virginia. You can see right now this is a lead Republican. She very well might lose to Jen Kiggins. Let's go to the next most important race that both parties were watching in Virginia, the 7th District. Abigail Spanberger, another incumbent, tough race against Yesli Megan.
Democrats believe, even though this is very close, it's outstanding vote, they believe this will be a hold for Abigail Spanberger, an important vote for Democrats. Lastly, in Virginia, the 10th district, closer to the Washington, D.C. area, Jennifer Wexton, that's a lead Democrat. Democrats feel very good that will be a hold for them. That's sort of a mixed bag in Virginia. Not a big wave, maybe a ripple, but kind of a mixed bag. Nora?
Major care with those important results and information. We're joined now by Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia. Governor, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, Nora, great to be with you, and it's an exciting day across the country. And in Virginia, we've been working hard, and I thought from the beginning that the road to the majority in the House was going to go through our 2nd district, and it sure looks like Jen Kiggans is going to pull that one off.
Well, I know you were with Kevin McCarthy just last night campaigning there in that district. But what about those 2 other races? What's happening in Virginia? Some Republicans were confident that they could win all 3 congressional districts.
Well, I felt that the momentum has felt really strong. I think the 7th is still leaning towards Yesley, and I've been pretty confident we'll win there. And Hung has run a very good race against Jennifer Wexton, and I think folks will be a little disappointed there because we really felt there was great momentum. But Jen's doing great in the 2nd, and we look forward to sending her to Congress. And I think Yesley Vega is going to pull a big upset here. By the way, the Hispanic vote is the big message. And to see what's happened with the Hispanic vote across Virginia, we won it last year, and to see the Hispanic vote really break that way, and then of course we've seen what's happened in Florida, in Miami-Dade County, with the Hispanic vote being the big differentiator. And I think that's the big message tonight, is to see this glacial shift in this demographic across America.
Go ahead, Gail.
It sounds like President Trump is gearing up for another presidential run. He says he has a big, very, very, very big announcement for us next week. Would you welcome that? I realize it's his decision, but would you welcome that?
Well, that's going to be his decision, and I think that all focus should be on today's election and the outcome of that. And I just think everybody was focusing on 2024 tonight. I just think maybe has their focus on the wrong area. I think tonight is all about these congressional Senate races, governor races, school board races, sheriff races, city council races. And I think we are going to continue to see a very strong night for Republican candidates across the country because Republicans have been focused on those key common sense solutions to the issues that voters care about: inflation, education, crime, and the border. And these issues tend to consistently break Republican ways. I think people trust Republican governors to deliver. We'll see Republican governors do very well in re-election, and we'll see a few states split tonight with Republican candidates replacing incumbent Democrats.
Governor, but in the 7th district, you won, I believe, by 11 points. It's an awful atmosphere for Democratic candidates. Why is it so close, given all the things you just said? It seems like there's something else going on if a congressional district that you won by 11 points is a nail biter.
Well, I actually won that congressional district by about 5 to 6. And it was awfully close last year. We had great turnout and a huge press last year across the entire Commonwealth. And I think we're seeing Yesley do well in the 7th. But as I said, I think she'll win. Listen, Abigail Spanberger is the incumbent, and it's tough to displace an incumbent. And to see Yesley run such a strong campaign, I think speaks very strongly to, in fact, the strength of her campaign and voter support in the 7th.
Well, Governor Youngkin, thank you for joining us, and wish we could talk to you longer, but we have some news about some people who are going to become new governors, which I'm sure you'll want to hear about as we're calling those races, so thank you so much. CBS News can now project 2 big governor wins. In the state of Maryland, when all the votes are counted, CBS News projects that Wes Moore will become the next governor of Maryland, and Moore will be the first African-American governor of Maryland. In the state of Arkansas, CBS News projects Sarah Huckabee Sanders will become the next governor of that state, and she will be the first female governor of Arkansas. So some firsts in both of those races. Let's bring in Gail King on both those races. You see Wes Moore, rising star in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, we certainly know Wes Moore here in New York, but he used to in Nevada. He's very popular, been very popular in the state of Maryland. I don't think that was a big surprise, but this is a big win, and he's also making history tonight. Always good when that happens. For a close-up perspective on the battleground races in Pennsylvania, let's go down to John Dillon. He's a long-time local analyst for CBS News station. That's Keith Bell in my direction.
I'm sorry.
Tim Boynton had sent something in my direction about a media inquiry about yesterday about the sheriff's thing.
Mhm.
And so I didn't want to say too much because they also sent it to CSSE, and that's not under my umbrella there.
Of
And that
CSSC.
would my other job.
Yes.
So, the Committee for Safety and Secure Elections out of the Brennan Center. So they emailed me, and so I sent back and said, it's a question. I'm just going to read it to you. Let's see. I'm sorry. There's 2 emails here. Following a likely case of disinformation in Alamance County's sheriff's race, Perry Johnson's campaign is pushing claims that voters are not seeing the sheriff's or other races on their ballots. In response to these claims, the Alamance County Board of Elections pulled the 2 ballots in question from the Eli Early Voting Site and reviewed them to make sure the ballots included the sheriff's race. They did. Could we have a conversation today about whether you ever experienced a situation like this if you or your wards ever pulled ballots from early voting? In the process of reviewing the ballots, it seems that the Board of Elections accidentally revealed that the voters voted for Mr. Johnson. Is this a problem? Can you see you can see the context and the information in the that you believe. I'll drive across the Piedmont today and be glad to meet with you, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote my response. And I did not want to meet with him. Just felt like Tim will do that. I said, hi, Jordan, busy day here too, so I'll try to give you a few answers via email. I don't recall ever having a situation such as the current statements regarding a name not being on the ballot with such traction that would have precipitated an equal reaction from any of my boards. Most likely this traction is driven by ever increasing social media presence and campaigns in political environments. I don't speak for the current board, but it appears the board's decision to address these 2 provisional ballots at this time was meant with good intention to put the issue of offices or names absent from the ballot to rest prior to election day to ensure voter confidence. The director most likely spoke with the board's attorney. I know she did, but most likely spoke with the board's attorney prior to this decision to seek advice on how to handle the issue. These were absentee ballots, so addressing them from an absentee board meeting seemed logical. The revealing of the vote cast by the board member was definitely unfortunate, but as you said, an accident. Fortunately, the names of the voters were not made public, maintaining the integrity of the secret ballot.
Yes.
That's excellent.
I felt like that kind of dodged the whole thing.
Mhm.
So I wanted y'all to know that.
But the thing is,
Because he's
it's the guy's fault. It's not his. The guy that's, I'm not pointing a finger at anybody on this board. The guy that said it wasn't on there was a liar.
Yes.
And he knew he was a liar.
And the campaign person just perpetuated it beyond belief, beyond reason.
Right.
I know Judson explained it to me, and I know it's probably difficult to understand because it's not what somebody does, but any reasonable person would, when you tell them it's like a copy machine, I mean, it essentially is. Once you have one copy, that's all it does.
Yeah, it just has
And
been.
if you test it and you have your own independent test script, not a test script that was developed by the voting machine vendor, it's your independent test script, that they would have no way how you manipulated the votes that are going to be entered. I mean, that's the purpose of logic and accuracy testing.
Yes.
And the thing is too, you can say if it was one guy, well, you know, he had a moment of brain, whatever. But when him, there's 2 people.
But she had 29. I said, 29. And we got 30,000 that voted, but 29 of them.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway,
Yeah, anyway, it's done. And so what's happened in the flood season?
I think Bud's about to
question this morning.
The here for Seneca continues to grow, so does the energy industry. The excitement is continuing to build here as we get closer to this race being called. Obviously, there are a lot of supporters gathered here tonight, and the big question now just becomes when this thing is called and what will happen there.
But we all in.
Just, we have one
Was
left.
it Rose?
The one that she went to pick up.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time tonight as the voting map.
God, what is it?
I want to show you one.
12 in. They're going back because they didn't close. They didn't close the machine. So they gotta come back, close it,
Take a look at
bring it.
where the results are coming in. I'm going to turn on the map of where the precincts are. The white is what we've received so far. The black is what's still in this big hole. We're talking Raleigh, Charlotte area, even Greensboro has a lot to still report. Here in Greensboro, only 95 of 165 precincts are in. Those are typically heavily Democratic areas, so we're going to have to see if there's enough to overcome that 10-month lead.
All right, Ben, thank you. We've still got a couple hours to go.
We're staying with you step by step as the night continues. This is the team that is bringing you the latest. Our digital newscast is continuing until 11 o'clock. You can also go online at WFYNews2.com for the latest election results. We'll see you again in 30 minutes.
Is it close? Hey, Brian, can I come over here and take a look?
Sure. So many more roads.
I think it's a weekend issue.
So, yeah, that's what you were telling me earlier.
Started to close and control of Congress hangs in the balance. The outcome of these midterms will also determine the future of Joe Biden's presidency, as former President Trump hints that he could announce a third run for the White House next week. We have breaking news at this hour as CBS News rates the House as leaning Republican. Also at this hour, polls have just closed in 3 more states, including the key battleground state of Nevada, a Senate race there, considered the most endangered Democratic senator. We'll have the latest from there in just a moment. But first, on this issue of the Senate, Nancy Cordes, our chief White House correspondent, I know you have some breaking information.
Sure, I just spoke to Delaware's Democratic Senator Chris Coons, and he said he's breathing a sigh of relief right now that it appears that Michael Bennet and Maggie Hassan are going to likely win re-election in Colorado and New Hampshire respectively. He says, quote, "We were going to have a rough night if they were underwater." And basically what this means is that it narrows the path for Republicans to pick up the 1 Senate seat they need to win control of the Senate.
An important marker as many people were sort of biting their fingernails heading into tonight. John Dickerson.
Well, it would have been a real slumping if they'd lost those 2 races. And one of the interesting things about what's happening in New Hampshire is that the very popular governor has been reelected, doing very well, but you have the split ticket voting where voters aren't just locked into a single party. They will make a decision, and this is why Mitch McConnell says, candidates matter when it comes to Senate races. And it'll be interesting as we watch through the night. People aren't just, in some cases, voting because the candidates wear a certain kind of shirt. They're paying attention to the qualities of those candidates.
It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out in Georgia, because right now Brian Kemp, of course, is ahead. Now you have Herschel Walker running against Raphael Warnock. when you say candidates matter, it will be very interesting.
And also,
Candidate quality, yes, does that matter?
in Arizona, that'll be an interesting question as well. And in Ohio, where Mike DeWine, we've called the race for governor, but JD Vance, is not. We haven't called the race yet for the Republican Senate candidate.
So many issues to discuss, of course, the ones that voters went to the polls voting on: inflation, abortion, immigration, and more. Let's go straight to the boards. In Nevada, CBS News characterizes the Nevada Senate race as a toss-up at this hour. Also in the Silver State, where polls just closed, the governor's race is currently a toss-up. Let's go down to Utah, where CBS News race rating is a lean Republican towards incumbent Mike Lee. He is running against the independent and former CIA officer Evan McMullen.
They've got,
And in races that closed earlier tonight, we're keeping an eye on. Let's look at the Georgia Senate race because it is still rated as a toss-up. You can see those numbers shifting as more and more of the vote comes in. And the
But didn't they have a runoff last time? That's why.
lean Republican
That's
for
what Warnock
incumbent
won, right?
Governor Brian Kemp in that matchup against
Because they had those-
against Stacey Abrams.
off-year-
And let's take a look at North Carolina. The CBS News rating for the Senate race there, lean Republican to Congressman Ted Budd. This was an example where the Democrats have recruited Sherry Beasley, who would be the only African-American senator, female senator in the U.S. Senate, a former head of the Supreme Court there, considered a top candidate. Let's go now. Coming up, Major Garrett and Anthony Salvato. I am sorry, we're getting some other information in my ear. Go ahead, Major.
One of the things we want to do at the data desk is explain to people how we move from vote just coming in, little trickles of vote as votes come in, basically showing our work, showing the mathematics. And we're going to do this in Nevada because right now, essentially, we're laying a concrete slab. We have almost no data at all in Nevada yet, but Anthony can walk us through what we're going to watch, the pace of that data as it comes in, and what it might reveal.
Okay, understanding Nevada, which isn't toss at this point. First of all, there's a broader story here. You always want to watch the Hispanic vote in Nevada. Could make up as much as a quarter, maybe 20% of the vote in Nevada. That's important. That tells a story.
And just to pause you there for a second, Anthony, if Republicans talking about this bullishness they feel about the Latino vote maybe trending their way, definitely watch it in Nevada.
Absolutely. If they can swing that Hispanic vote towards them, towards Republicans, when it's been so reliably Democratic, that bodes well for Republican chances. And then the other thing to watch as this starts to come in is I'm going to show you the past vote in Nevada, just to give you a lay of the land. This is Nevada by county. I'm going to point down here to Las Vegas.
That's just Clark County.
Clark County, Nevada, was in its own time. Land doesn't vote, so there's a lot of red, a little concentration of blue. I'm going to turn this on its side, and you're going to see Las Vegas and Clark County pop up really big. This is where the vote is. And so as we go through the night, it's when we see Clark County vote. When we see Las Vegas vote, then we can start to tell the tale of what's going to happen in Nevada.
So Nora, we have a concrete slab. We will be building a house in Nevada, and we're building in every state and race across the country. But you got to start somewhere. And Nevada, we have no data, but we have a way to approach this and talk about it throughout the evening. As the data comes in, it signals where these races might end up.
Right, and we want to be transparent with our viewers because Nevada just closed, so we want to make sure we're giving you the very latest information as well as all of the other data that is just coming in at this hour. One of the things we've been talking about tonight as part of the race rating that you made is that the House leans Republican at this hour, and yet we thought by this time we would know about a number of key races. I want to bring in Ed O'Keefe on that because, Ed, some of the Republicans we talked to said, watch New England, watch the Northeast, Virginia. There'll be a number of states will pick up early that could signal a tsunami. Has that happened?
No, it has not. We're following about 49 House battlegrounds across the country, and most of them are Democratic. None of them at this point have turned red. You can look at a map of about 14 across the country that sort of geographically represent the kinds of races Republicans told us tonight they thought they would be able to prevail in. The first district of Indiana, for example, was one of those, a district that Democrats have held for since Herbert Hoover was president. Another in Rhode Island that the Democrats have held since 2000, also staying Democrats so far tonight. And down in Texas, Republicans were hoping for a sweep of border districts there with Latina candidates running against Democrats. Congressman Henry Cuellar spoke with him just a little while ago. He says he's going to win this race. He's done extremely well. Normal voting patterns are being maintained, and he says the millions of dollars spent against him will quote a bunch of baloney. More than $9 million spent against him. But this is this early sign
going back to these races that we're tracking here across the country, the Democrats are holding on. Multiple Democrats telling me just in the last half hour, Nora, that the bigger majority that the Republicans were seeking is not materializing yet tonight because Democrats are holding on in several of those races, at least in the Northeast and along the Eastern Seaboard.
Well, I'm really interested in Texas, of course, because a number of those Latino Republican candidates, two of them married to Border Patrol agents, immigration, such a huge issue there. Kevin McCarthy was just there yesterday or the day before campaigning with them.
Right.
This is as Robert Costa has reported, this is going to be the first thing that Kevin McCarthy says he would do as Speaker is a border bill.
Right, but he may not do it with border Republicans. In all three of those Texas races right now, the Democrat is ahead, or the race is still considered a toss-up, but there is no red wave materializing, at least in that section of Texas. Remember, Democrats have represented it for a century, and tonight they're telling us it looks as if that history is over.
All right, we're gonna keep watching that one and bringing in Leslie Sanchez, our Republican contributor. And Leslie, I know you follow this issue closely. Leslie?
Yeah, no, I think Republicans have been very optimistic about that area. It is still a very strong Democratic stronghold when you're talking about South Texas, the three Latinas that are there. Myra Flores flipped that special election, first Republican to win since 1871. And she's in a really tough battle right now for that border area. But Monica de la Cruz, Texas 15, it's a toss-up. She looks like she's going to come out victorious. And what this means overall, Nora, is there is a change. This working class Latino voter is not self-identifying as Republican, but they are looking at Republican candidates, and these female Latinas, as you mentioned, many married to Border Patrol agents, are going to focus on the border, and they would change the Republican conference in Washington.
Leslie Sanchez, thank you. And we are going to be talking about, with those exit poll data, did the Republican Party make inroads with Latino and Hispanic voters as well as Black voters? They will have that coming up. Also, as we mentioned, polls have just closed in the state of Nevada, and that's where Manny Bojorquez is tonight. Good evening, Manny.
Good evening, Nora. We keep talking so much about inflation and the economy, and there's a reason the GOP contender in the very close Senate race here, Adam Laxalt, believes that issue will resonate even more with Nevadans. One, the rate of inflation and gas prices are both above the national average here, but also those COVID lockdowns, the shadow of that looms large over the tourism industry, which is the largest in this state. Now, the incumbent here, the Democrat, Catherine Cortez Masto, has not been silent on the economy. She has said, listen, we feel your pain. She has mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, said, let us keep working to reduce that, send me back to the Senate. But, you know, the big key here, maybe those Latino voters, as we have been talking about, 20% expected to be the number of the votes here from the Latino community. The GOP hoping to get some of those points away from the Democrat in this race, especially in Clark County, which have been solidly blue for quite some time.
Manny Bojorquez there at Laxalt headquarters. Thank you, Manny. Let's bring in Margaret Brennan. Margaret, this is a seat that the Democrats have held for 36 years. And yet she's considered the most vulnerable Democratic senator. This is a state where the economy is in shambles.
Well, they really still haven't recovered the tourism industry, which is still about 10% off from where it was in 2019, the last month I just checked. And so they haven't brought back that really core business for so many people there. They have some of the highest gas prices in the country as well. Hold on just a second. I just want to note that former President Donald Trump is speaking right now from Mar-a-Lago. He was planning to claim some sort of victory and ride Republican victory or claim credit for it. Tonight we're going to continue to monitor his remarks from Mar-a-Lago and bring you anything he says of significance in just a moment. My apologies, just wanted to note that he was speaking and that we're monitoring that. But you were talking about, Margaret, the economy. The presidential race begins tomorrow, right? But for today, or perhaps today, you may have already, exactly. But for a state like Nevada, it is so interesting. There are shifts underway. Yes, it's also got consistently ranked near the bottom in terms of educational quality, in terms of schools. But there are so many shifts, and I know Nancy was talking about this the other day, the idea that
Harry Reid is not there, right, in the way.
I saw interviews with Nevada voters talking that very same thing. This would not be happening, John, if Harry Reid were here.
Right, the vaunted Harry Reid machine that has existed for decades in Nevada. Obviously, the former Democratic leader in the Senate who passed away last year. His machine lives on, but obviously the figurehead is gone.
You may have a switch, you could have a switch in all three, Governor, Senate, and Secretary of State offices going from Democrats to Republicans, which puts a battleground state into the election denial camp possibly, which is one of several states where that's the case tonight. Michigan, Arizona being two others, Wisconsin.
But John, do you think Harry Reid would have made a difference? He was considered such a master.
He had a machine that for real in Nevada, and he was very powerful. But these are tough economic headwinds, so you know we'll see at the end of tonight whether even a magician like Harry Reid could have pulled it off.
On that issue of those tough economic headwinds, let's bring in former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who served during the Clinton administration. Larry, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that you've talked about America's facing some of its most complex times ahead. What do you make when you see the results tonight, and whether or not Democrats address the issues on voters' minds?
Well, look, I think that the Democrats and President Biden and his administration have done some very important things that we're going to see the benefits of over time. We're going to reduce our dependence on semiconductors from Taiwan, so close to China. We're going to rebuild our country's infrastructure so everybody can get access to broadband. We're going to build a whole set of new industries based on electric cars and the electrification of vehicles. Those things were seeds that were planted in the last 2 years, and we're always easy. There was a lot of fighting over the politics, but I think they're going to pay some important benefits over time. But yeah, look, we do have a real issue with inflation in our country, and it's going to not be easy to work through it. We're going to have to take the long view with respect to it. Support the Federal Reserve in doing what it needs to do to get that inflation rate down. The kind of numbers you're showing, 7, 8, 9, that's just not acceptable and can't be a basis for prosperity. And we've got to figure out how to bring it down. And discipline in our spending, discipline in our monetary policy is going to be important.
Larry, when you look at the long view, as you say, do you think Congress should actually do anything about inflation?
I think it's mostly, in the case of inflation, about the Federal Reserve. I think Congress can avoid making mistakes, can avoid costly tariffs that raise prices. It can avoid overly burdensome regulation, but mostly that responsibility's got to rest with the Fed, and it's got to rest with budget control. But Congress, what's most important to me about Congress for the next 2 months is that they avoid turning the national debt into some kind of hostage
49,
where
49.
people are threatening not to pay our national debt to get their way. Because this is a fragile moment in financial markets. We've already got interest rates having spiked. And if politicians start playing games threatening our country's creditworthiness to get their way, that could really be a catastrophe. And that's a warning to both sides. Fight about the issues, but whatever my kids do, we can figure out whether they pay, we can figure out whether I pay, but we do pay our bills in our family. And that's the attitude we've got to take as a country.
Well, thank you for sharing what's going on in your family as well with us and the economy. Larry Summers, always good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. And next, we're going to have some new information on exit polls in Georgia, what's happening there. We're also going to check in with our team of reporters on the ground. This is CBS News, America Decides.
Command hooks are easy to apply. Do
Denture wears in the wild. One adhesive Seabond denture seals. It's 75% stronger all day hold thanks to gradual release technology. Go wild. C-Bond, Wild Andy Syndrome. Achievement takes more than having a dream. It takes having the spirit to beat the odds. It takes the courage to pursue a passion. The heart to turn it outside. And the determination to turn an idea into an enterprise. I'm the Hartford, and I see the human in human achievement.
The insurance from the Hartford. Bonus out your reputation. Welcome back to our CBS News Election Night headquarters. Let's go to Vlad Dutay now, who has new information on the exit polls in Georgia. Vlad?
Nora, we wanted to take a look at the quality of candidates when it comes to the Senate race in Georgia. So we asked Georgia voters what their top candidate quality was. And it's shared values, followed by something with integrity and honesty. So let's take a look at the numbers. Herschel Walker wins among values voters. 7 in 10 who say that it is most important, they are voting for Herschel Walker. But in terms of honesty, take a look at these numbers. Raphael Warnock is winning those who say honesty and integrity is most important to them. But Raphael Warnock is winning another important quality. Take a look. Judgment. On balance, Georgia voters think Warnock shows good judgment, but Herschel Walker does not, including, this is really fascinating, a third of his supporters are voting for him anyway, despite this characteristic. And here's another interesting nugget. Some 88% of white evangelical voters are voting for Herschel Walker.
Vladimir Dutay.
That's a little surprising.
Yeah, we know that Herschel Walker was a well-known running back, Heisman Trophy winner. He has had 4 different children with 4 different wives. He's been accused of taking 2 of his girlfriends to have abortions. What do you see in these numbers?
Well, what I see is voters were asked about integrity and honesty, and they said, no, Warnock's got those. But I share Herschel Walker's values, but obviously values that don't include integrity and honesty. Well, if your values don't include integrity and honesty, they're not. They're kind of, and judgment's not in there either. It's a pretty it's a Swiss cheese set of values if you're absenting all the things that we traditionally think of as values. And the white evangelical vote is very interesting too.
And throwing his own son coming out, John, saying that he was not even a good father and that he was somebody that didn't tell the truth. That's why I'm surprised to hear that he would score higher than a minister when it comes to value.
And that's because they think that at the end of the day, he will vote the way that they want him to vote, regardless of how he has behaved in the past. They think he'll vote against abortion.
He shares my values, really, he shares my positions, policy positions.
Well, it is a key contest in Georgia, and reminding everyone who hasn't been covering politics that neither of the candidates gets 50% of the vote. They're going to be at this again a month from now. Let's check in also with Nicole Killian, who is there in Atlanta at Herschel Walker's election night headquarters. Nicole, I know you're talking to the campaigns. What are they telling you?
Well, right now, both campaigns are really just very cautiously optimistic as they ride this out. You know, here at Herschel Walker headquarters, they are hoping that they continue to see more votes come in, more specifically from counties north of Atlanta, because they believe that will help boost Walker's advantage in this race potentially. But I do want to drill down on one interesting dynamic that we are seeing, and it's this concept of the split ticket voter, people who are going for Republican Governor Brian Kemp, but also supporting Walker's opponent instead, Senator Raphael Warnock. I talked to one of those voters earlier today who told me he was really pleased with the job that the governor
It was locked. We didn't, he don't have to give him touch to anybody to get in, but she called Pringlewood, found out we can close it out off any machine. It does not have to be that machine. Because sometimes, all the data's on the stick, so all we need is the machine, so we can still close it out.
Walker in some of these counties, a lot of Walker supporters not really concerned about that. They think he's having a really good night so far, despite all the headlines he's faced throughout this campaign, Nora.
Nicole Killian, who has been covering so much of that contest in Georgia, knows it so well. Nicole, thank you so much. And coming up next, new reporting on some of the biggest battleground races as control of Congress hangs in the balance. You're watching CBS News, America Decides.
Type 2 diabetes? Discover the power of 3 in the Ozempic Trizone.
In my Ozempic Ozempic Trizone, I lowered my A1C, CV risk, and lost weight.
Ozempic provides powerful A1C reduction. In studies, the majority of people reached an A1C under 7 and maintained it. Ozempic lowers the risk of major cardiovascular events such as stroke, heart attack, or death in adults also with known heart disease. And you may lose weight. Adults lost up to 14 pounds. Ozempic isn't for people with type 1 diabetes. Don't share needles or pens or reuse needles. Don't take Ozempic if you or your family ever had medullary thyroid cancer or had multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2 or if allergic to it. Stop Ozempic and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, or an allergic reaction. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis, gallbladder problems may occur. Tell your provider about vision problems or changes. Taking Ozempic with a sulfonylurea or insulin may increase low blood sugar risk. Side effects like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea may lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
Join the millions already taking Ozempic. Ask your healthcare provider about the Ozempic Trizone.
You may pay as little as $25 for a 3-month prescription.
Are you tired of clean clothes that just don't smell clean? Downy Unstoppables In-Wash Scent Boosters keep your laundry smelling fresh way longer than detergent alone. If you want laundry to smell fresh for weeks, make sure you have Downy Unstoppables In-Wash Scent Boosters.
My father didn't know his dad.
She knew that I always want to know more about my family history.
With ancestry, I dug and dug until I found some information.
I was able to find out more than just a name.
And then you add it to the tree. And I found ship manifests.
Certificate.
Where do you that?
I love it so much to know where my father worked, where he grew up. It's like you discover a new family member.
It's the greatest gift.
Now on sale at Ancestry.
Welcome back to our CBS News Election Night Headquarters. An exciting night so far. Let's get straight to the race results. We have an updated CBS News rating in the Georgia's gubernatorial race, now likely Republican towards current Governor Brian Kemp. And there's some history being made tonight. CBS News is projecting Democrat Maura Healey will become the first openly lesbian governor in U.S. history and the first female governor elected in the state of Massachusetts. And CBS News is projecting Democrat Maxwell Frost will become the first Gen Z represented in the state of Florida. A young person, Gen Z, I think means just over the age of 25. I forgot what Gen Z I am. You're always young. All right, coming up, we have new race results with polls closed at more than 140 million voters across the country. You're watching CBS News, America Decides. We are on top of the midterm election results and getting a better look at who will be celebrating tonight.
The races are heating up as we grow closer to 100% in precincts reporting.
Let's start with the race that the nation is watching closely. North Carolina's U.S. Senate seat. Republican Ted Budd has 51% of the vote. Democrat Sherry Beasley has 47%.
In the York County Sheriff's race, incumbent Danny Rogers is going up Phil Byrd, and right now it is not close. Danny Rogers with 57% of the vote, Phil Byrd 43%, 76% of precincts are reporting here.
Now the Forsyth County District Attorney race. This one is neck and neck. It's incumbent Jim O'Neill against challenger Denise Hartsfield. You see it right there, 50% and 50%. Let's go back now to one of the biggest matchups of the night, the race for U.S. Senate. WFMY News' Grace Holland is live now in Winston-Salem, and Ted Budd's walking away.
The excitement is continuing to build here. The Ted Budd campaign told me a short period of time ago.
Oh no, we just lost Grace. We understand that we are reestablishing our connection with her. Let's check back in.
Sorry, I was saying that the Ted Budd's campaign told me a short period of time ago that they are feeling very encouraged by these results that are coming in at this point. Apparently, the congressman is watching and feeling very good about these numbers. He is up at this point in the night, and as you can see, lots of supporters here tonight that are waiting watching, just the excitement and the anxiousness is continuing to build in here as people are voting to hear an announcement. We're told out there in the night that Lieutenant Governor Marty Robinson and Senator Tom Tillis will be the speakers. We'll get it back to you guys now.
All right, Grace, keep us posted. Let's go to Raleigh now. Kevin Kennedy is at Sherry Beasley's headquarters. Kevin, it was pretty wild there before. How's the energy like now?
The energy is certainly still good. It's just a matter of what kind of a celebration party this is going to end up being, whether or not it's a victory party or a different kind of party, the kind of party that Sherry Beasley had opened at the beginning of the day.
Sorry.
Only 19 months ago, she announced her candidacy for the North Carolina Senate. There was optimism certainly along the way. This 19-month journey where she has been crisscrossing the state. Look, the vibe of the room was certainly one of excitement and anticipation. I would say that has been tempered a little bit. There's certainly one now a little bit more of a caution and concern as we see the results kind of starting to come in, but they've not given up. They know there's still some districts that are out there, and Sherry Beasley could certainly flip it. We will see what happens as we move into the night. For now, we're live in downtown Raleigh. Kevin Kennedy, WFNY.
Kevin, thank you. Let's get some more insight from our Ben Briscoe. Ben, is the deficit too much for Sherry Beasley to overcome?
Well, statistically, no. Take a look at this. Right now, she's down about 138,000 votes. But there's a quarter of the votes statewide still to come in. That's about a million people. The question is, where are they going to come from, and will they be for Sherry Beasley or Ted Bugg? But take a look at where Sherry Beasley is doing well across the state. You can see all the major cities. Now, I want to compare that to this map right here, where we are still lacking voter information. The dark holes are where we need a lot of precincts still to come in. The biggest right now is Wake County, where they have only 38 of 208 precincts in. If you look, that's 276 voters counted so far. They have about 800,000 voters just in that one county voter register. Now, we know they all didn't vote today, and that not all of them will go to Beasley, but it's this statistic right here, as well as some of the other big cities that are not fully in yet, for the reason the race has not been called. We're going to continue to monitor this and get up-to-date moments and updates all night long.
Thank you. Our team is on top of all races. We've got the latest result on WFNYnews2.com.
And come on to the until all of these races are called. They could be hours before we know those final results. We will see you back here on WFNY News 2 at 11.
The policies of the Democrats are beyond description. You're right. We'll take step one.
And welcome back to our CBS News Election Night headquarters here in New York. It is 10:30 p.m. in the East, and as we just mentioned, polls just closed in the battleground state of Nevada. Right now, CBS News rates the House of Representatives as leaning Republican at this hour. Lots of new information coming in. John Dickerson is our chief political analyst. John, so far, how is this night shaping up?
Lots of information is coming in, but it's not coming in with the rapidity that certainly Republicans had hoped. They thought they would have some big wins early in the night that would show the size of their victory. Some were even talking about winning in places where Joe Biden had won by 55% or more. In 2018, even Democrats who had a great year that year never won anywhere where Donald Trump won by 55% or more. It gives you a sense of how ambitious their ideas were about tonight. But so far, and there's much of the night to go, it looks like gains for Republicans, but not of the magnitude that they were talking about.
All right, let's look at some of the big race results that are coming in, get you up to date on those. In Arizona, the Senate race with 42% of the vote in is a toss-up. between Captain Mark Kelly, Senator Kelly, and Blake Masters. The race for the Arizona governor's mansion also in toss-up, which is 42% of the vote in. In Nevada, CBS News race rating right now for the Senate race, a toss-up. They're awaiting more vote into that coming in that race. And in Ohio, the Senate race between J.D. Vance and Congressman Tim Ryan is leaning in the Republicans' favor. Donald Trump was just there last night. And in Pennsylvania, a race we will be watching for days probably. The Senate race and toss-up with 56% of the vote in. Toss-up is still a long night ahead.
And that might not be election night, or it might be election week.
That's absolutely
A couple of these races, yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things we talked about is that race rating that for the House that it leans Republican, and yet at this hour we thought we would see a much more, the Republicans were extremely confident. I want to bring in Ed O'Keefe about that. I mean, I was talking to Republicans weeks ago, even today, they were very confident about a big win tonight.
Yeah, and the idea was that you would see early wins, early decisive wins in places like Virginia, parts of the Midwest and New England where Democrats have always done well, believing that they had peeled back Democratic advantages in those states and somehow pulled it up, but they haven't. You look at the 14 key races we've been monitoring tonight in places like Rhode Island, in Indiana, in Virginia, in Texas, Democrats are either leading in those races right now, or they're going to manage to hold on to them, at least the candidates tell us that. And they may only get one of the ones in Virginia that they have their eye on as well. So they probably get the majority, but they're not going to get that bigger majority that everyone had been anticipating. A sign perhaps the Democrats did better in suburban districts across the country, and in the Midwest where Republicans were also able to line.
Adam, can you here go back to 2016 for just a second? When in 2016 the Democrats were very confident, and it didn't work out the way they thought. Here we sit in 2022, the Republicans are extremely confident. I realize the night is still early and we're still waiting for things to come in, but could that possibly happen tonight, what happened in 2016?
It's still early on in the evening, absolutely. And one Democratic official I was messaging with said the Republicans may have overplayed. They're getting a red ripple, not a red wave. It's a little early to declare victory here, though. Very, very key point here. But as we were talking about earlier, you need 218 to govern, and the size of that majority is going to be really, really important. And a ripple could be good enough. I mean, they only need to pick up 5 House seats in order to take control. It won't be the kind of control they want, but a win's a win. But based on what Ed is saying, it sounds like we were talking about how we may not know control of the Senate for weeks. What if we don't know control of the House for a few days as well, particularly as these races in California, for example,
The way the count is going slowly tonight because it's so decisive. I'm looking in the direction of Anthony as well. Yes, it could be a few days, if not weeks. And remind people, we should remind people, the reason Republicans want a bigger majority is because they're going to have disagreements among themselves over tactics and how to proceed with the priorities. There's going to be a block of Republicans who say, impeach the president, impeach cabinet secretaries. There are going to be others who say, no, let's focus on fixing inflation, fix the economy, and Speaker McCarthy, if it is indeed Speaker McCarthy, is going to face challenges within that caucus. He's going to get pressure from former President Trump. There may be some who will take their cues from other Republican leaders as well, and it'll be messy.
But is any election ever really known on election night? John, you're the historian. The election ever really known?
Not unless, no, they're always, Dick Becker knows for sure.
You know it because you can call them because the margins are very large and enough ballots are out there that we know the ones remaining can't change the outcome. But the official certification of the votes, that doesn't happen until days or weeks after. And in a state like California, which we don't really go and pay attention to in the presidency, it could take weeks.
Robert Costa, I know you started this evening as probably the only reporter that had a phone conversation with Kevin McCarthy. How do you think he's looking at this now, almost 11 o'clock on the East?
Have some more news to share about what's going on inside the House Republican Party right now tonight. We can break the news here that Representative Jim Banks of Indiana has decided to run for majority whip. That's the number 3 post. And this is important. You may not know Jim Banks. He's a congressman from Indiana. He runs the Conservative Republican Study Committee inside the House. Why this matters, to Ed's point, If Banks gets in there as the number 3 House Republican next year, it will put pressure on McCarthy at times to move in a right-wing direction on things like economic brinkmanship when it comes to the debt limit. So you have a real conservative now angling to be right under McCarthy and Steve Scalise in the House leadership. Based on CBS News reporting tonight, he has 22 whips on his side. He will send a letter tomorrow morning.
Robert Costa, John Dickerson.
And just another thing about having a thin margin, if you have a thin margin, any man or woman is a king. Because they can say, you want only Republicans to vote on this, which is the way Republicans have been voting. Well, I want X, Y, and Z, and you get enough of that, and it's a tough business getting a majority.
Gail's point about 2016. Remember where we were in 2020? The early poll projections were Biden might win that by a lot. He didn't. And one of the great things we're experiencing in 2018, 2020, and 2022 is large turnout. We had record turnout in 2018, 2020, we had a very high turnout today. What does high turnout do? It creates X factors. It creates unpredictability. And all the wise people that we talk to who tell us, Republicans and Democrats, what they expect, are continuously surprised. Higher turnout, real-life democracy creates real-life variables.
And I want to add to this, one group that's keeping Democrats in the ball game here is one of the influencer groups that we've identified. It's the Restoring Road Voters. We've got some more exclusive CBS polling that I want to show you about. What we said was, how big can this group get? These are women who are voting on the abortion issue, opposed to the overturn of Roe v. Wade, want to restore against the name. What happened was, Restoring Roe Voters, their total size of the electorate, and we're going to go through 2 steps here, their total size of the electorate isn't quite as large as we thought, but they went from 24% to 22%. Now here's hold on a second, go to the next slide here, and I'm going to show you that they were voting overwhelmingly for Democrats, but tonight we learned they're voting even more overwhelmingly for Democrats, from 81% to 89% tonight. So what that tells you is, even though the turnout may not quite have been the target, maybe Democrats had hoped, Democrats' message got through to them. So Democrats got larger margins out of that, and that in turn helps keep Democrats in this contest at least as a.
And that might be the tail we are seeing in some of these House races that didn't Republican because of maybe these voters, or as we talked on the show yesterday morning, Gail, people who newly registered for the first time after the Dobbs decision to make this particular vote.
Margaret Brennan has been following this issue so closely, so I want to touch on that in the national sense. And also, I know you have information because abortion is on the ballot in 5 states.
In 5 states, and I want to highlight a few of them that we're watching closely. In Michigan, there is a state ballot initiative for constitutional abortion.
All right, as soon as I make these copies and give them to y'all,
Yes.
Okay.
And this would declare abortion as a right. It would set a very messy legal battle within that state over that. Another state that we're watching closely is Kentucky. There is a no vote on an amendment. And it looks like right now votes are still being tabulated. About 80% are in so far. This no vote, it's complicated, but what it would do is if it prevails, it opens a legal pathway for the state Supreme Court to ultimately strike down this restriction. So what this could do is make abortion legal. It is currently illegal in Kentucky. That would mean the Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, would potentially be at the helm of a state where abortion becomes legal. So if this is the prevailing vote, it heads next to the state Supreme Court. This reminds us of what we saw earlier this year with the state of Kansas, a ruby red state where, as we're seeing, this is a complex issue.
Vlad Dubier has more on the national exit polls on the issue of abortion. Vlad.
So Nora, we want to talk about how Americans are thinking about abortion, and you won't be surprised that most think that abortion should be legal. We know in these numbers. But those voting for a Democrat tonight are angry about the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Look at this number. 69% of those who are voting for Democrats are angry about the overturning.
All right, well, thank y'all.
Thank you.
I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Don, thanks to you for a good election.
We got it.
Sorry, what?
Great job.
Well, I'll be glad to report you back.
Joel Payne, he worked on Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. Joel, when you see those numbers and you heard from Democrats earlier night, they were concerned about turnout, what are you hearing?
Well, it's clear that the abortion issue sort of reduced Democratic turnout. One of the places where we do have a potential